Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 701. How to Save Soul Society. At this moment, both Aizen Sosok and Senju Cheng are very clear that they have become the only focus of the entire Seireitei. Above this Seireitei, there is no soul-blocking membrane to block it, and the cold wind keeps blowing over the figures of Aizen Sosok and Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng holds the blade of Kijika Suigetsu in one hand, and the two sides stare at each other in a stalemate. A moment later, Aizen Sosok's face, which had been slightly out of control, regained its arrogance, and he spoke in a tone that everything was still under control. "Makoto-kun, I didn't expect you to be able to stand in front of me in this posture. I didn't expect it either, Captain Aizen. Was it just because I rejected your invitation that you secretly attacked me?" Senju Cheng asked back. "I can't help it, Makoto-kun. You are too sharp. With your incredible observation and feedback, you noticed the false illusion I created with the mirror flower and water moon. Then you secretly tested me, and even quietly integrated part of your flesh and blood into the mirror flower and water moon, thus successfully becoming immune to the ability of the mirror flower and water moon." At this point, Aizen Sosok's voice paused slightly, and then said, "Makoto-kun, I gave you a chance to replace Tosen Kaname and Ichimura Jin and become my last subordinate to ascend the throne. However, it is a pity that you have refused the invitation and have become the biggest obstacle to my ascending the throne." Senju Cheng's eyebrows slightly twisted, as if a too gentle and innocent boy was deceived, and said, "Sure enough, you explained to me that you concealed the real ability of the mirror flower and water moon, which was a lie to me, right?" "That's right," Aizen Sosok replied. "So, including those who attacked the expeditionary army with nearly 1,000 achakas, you were also behind the scenes?" Senju Cheng's voice revealed a hint of anger. "Ha ha ha." Aizen Sosok couldn't help but laugh wantonly, spread out one hand and said, "Makoto, you are too trusting. Your gentle and kind character really makes me wantonly play with you. The scene of you fighting almost alone against thousands of achakas and trying to protect me is really unforgettable to me. Captain Aizen, you are too rude," Senju Cheng reminded in a deep voice. "Do you still keep the honorific title?" Aizen Sosok said with absolute arrogance on his face. "Just the so-called captain is nothing more than an ant. How can the title of captain match me? It is you who is rude, Makoto. You are too arrogant, Aizen," Senju Cheng reminded. "Sorry, I am so arrogant, Makoto." Aizen Sosok raised his head slightly, as if looking down at Senju Cheng, and said, "Do you think it's still decades ago? Makoto, my realm is now far beyond the level of the god of death. Even if you can see through the mirror flower and the water moon, so what? I only need to raise my hand slightly, and the so-called captain can be crushed to death like an ant, for example, like this." Then, Aizen Sosok smiled slightly at Senju Cheng, but raised his palm towards the black barrier of King Mushi final style Yanma cricket in the distance. Hadao no. 90 black coffin in an instant, a supergiant black coffin was formed in an instant, and it completely wrapped the King Mushi final style Yanma cricket that was more than the size of 10 football fields. The next moment, inside the black coffin, countless crisscrossing shadow blades burst out instantly, attacking the existence trapped in the black coffin indiscriminately. After a few breaths, the black coffin dissipated, and the barrier of King Mushi final style Yanma cricket was directly lifted, and two figures with blood gushing out appeared in it. Kurosaki Shin. Tosen Kaname. Puff, dense and horrible wounds covered almost all parts of the bodies of Kurosaki Shin and Tosen Kaname, and bloodlines were visible to the naked eye. In addition to Kurosaki Shin's face full of unwillingness to fall down, Tosen Kaname looked at Aizen Sosok with a look of disbelief. "Why? Why?" In response to Tosen Kaname, Aizen Sosok's eyes were full of indifference, as if he was looking at a random experimental product. For a moment, the spiritual pressure of Kurosaki Shin and Tosen Kaname almost instantly declined, and they fell into the brink of death. "Aizen, you guy." Senju Cheng glared at Aizen Sosok, but he also loosened his hand holding Jin Wushuyu and pulled out the Sinrawansai bang from his waist. "Show, arrive, transcend, the ultimate of all things, the root of everything, all things in the universe." Instantly, along with Senju Cheng's words of liberation echoing in the Seireitei, the endless green grass full of hope spread madly in the Seireitei. It was no longer the range that could be measured by the naked eye in the past, but countless green grass instantly spread throughout the entire Seireitei. This scene also shocked countless Shinigami. Just the first release changed the terrain of the entire Seireitei, and it seemed that even Senju Makoto's face showed a bit of just the right amount of surprise. However, Senju Makoto seemed to have no time to investigate further, and the green grass that spread throughout the Seireitei quickly entangled the injured Shinigami within the entire Seireitei. Instantly, the luster that seemed to represent vitality lit up on the injured Shinigami one by one. Even the injuries of captain-level Shinigami such as Kurosaki Shin, Hizajishui, Kachikabyakura, etc. were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, even Stark, who was the most lazy and indifferent, was out of control. Especially as Kurosaki Shin, who was seriously injured and dying just now, seemed a little dazed and had recovered to stand up. Stark couldn't help but speak. What an amazing and exaggerated healing ability, it almost makes all the Shinigami have the ability to regenerate at super speed. If we don't kill that man first, it's probably impossible to defeat the Seireitei. Ulquiorra said calmly. Even Aizen Sasuke seemed to have not expected this scene at all, and his expression changed for a while, and then he said to Senju Makoto. Mr. Makoto, what's the point? Even if you can heal the injuries of the other Shinigami infinitely, those ants will not pose any threat to me. It is impossible to save the Soul Society with this ridiculous healing ability alone. No, Aizen, I'm different from you. My ability exists for protection. Senju Makoto stared at Aizen Sasuke, and his gentle and firm voice echoed throughout the Seireitei, and he spoke. If the healing ability cannot defeat you, then I will use my blade to save the Soul Society from your hands. Chapter 702. Singing the Black Coffin. Chapter 702. Postscript. Chanting Black Coffin. Do you think you can do it? Aizen Sasuke's tone was still full of arrogance and disdain. He raised his palm and pointed it in the direction of Senju Makoto and said, Makoto-kun, this is the end of our communication. It's time to end this boring farce. Almost as Aizen Sasuke's voice fell, his figure suddenly flashed and appeared on Senju Makoto's body, and the mirror flower and water moon slashed towards Senju Makoto's head. Makoto-kun, I will let you understand what the gap in realm is. Even if you have the ability to be immune to the mirror flower and water moon, you will never be able to reach the absolute gap. At this moment, Aizen Sasuke's spiritual pressure almost completely exploded, and the spiritual pressure like a deep abyss and a prison was across the sky above the Seireitei. Even though there was a very long distance between the many Shinigami of the 13th Division and Aizen Sasuke, the pressure brought by the terrifying spiritual pressure still made many Shinigami confused and unconsciously fell to the ground. Boom. The air torn apart instantly formed a terrifying aftermath when the mirror flower and water moon slashed down, and even the sky was darkened for a moment. However, dang. The myriad things were across his head, but Senju Makoto took the blow steadily. Aizen Sasuke seemed to be somewhat surprised and froze. The mirror flower and water moon turned into a large afterimage that completely covered Senju Makoto's figure. However, the trajectory of the sword that made ordinary captain-level Shinigami dazzled and difficult to see was completely blocked by Senju Makoto. For a while, countless flames splashed around Aizen Sasuke and Senju Makoto, and the speed of the swords of both sides was getting faster and faster, which made countless Shinigami stunned. Aizen Sasuke's power and terror have already been like a huge shadow in the hearts of all Shinigami. But Senju Makoto, this vice-captain who had sacrificed for decades in the history of Soul Society, was actually strong enough to fight Aizen Sasuke head-on and not lose, which was undoubtedly beyond the imagination of others. Originally, in the minds of the other captains, the reason why they placed their last hope on Senju Makoto was because Urahara Kisyu judged that Senju Makoto had the method to restrain Mirror Flower and Water Moon. As for the combat power that Senju Makoto himself possessed, even if no captain underestimated it, they did not expect it to be able to match Aizen Sasuke. Wait, didn't they say that even if Vice-Captain Senju Makoto was revived, he might suffer from memory loss and severe weakening of combat power due to the incompleteness of his soul? Hitsuge Yatsuru was amazed and couldn't help asking Unohana Retsu. Judging from the theories of the way of resurrection and medical skills, it is indeed true. Unohana Retsu heard this and first confirmed what Hitsuge Yatsuru said. After all, this kind of common sense that is well known in theory cannot be false. Then, Unohana Retsu changed the subject and spoke. However, Makoto's recovery was not completed according to the original plan. The operation I performed was interrupted by number naught at the most critical moment and completely failed. What really revived Makao was the power of the King's Seal, and Unohana-Retsu's tone condensed, staring at the faint golden light emanating from Senju Makao's body, and said, "The King's Seal seems to be entrusted to Makao at this moment. Perhaps with the help of the power of the King's Seal, Makao will create a miracle." As Unohana-Retsu's convincing judgment came out, many captains also completely understood the current situation. The power of the King's Seal is undoubtedly extremely amazing and powerful. Previously, the theft of the power of the King's Seal by Kusanagi Sojiro and Tsuneshiro Tokinada alone caused the entire Seireitei to suffer unprecedented losses. Now, in addition to the collision between Senju Makao and Aizen Sasuke, it is also a collision between the King's Seal and the Hyokyu. Seeing the frequency of the crazy collisions between the two zanpakutōs, Senraman and Kyokushuigetsu, and as if under the power of the King's Seal, Senju Makao's spiritual pressure has unknowingly increased to an extremely terrifying level. The collision between the two sides is no longer just a collision of kendo, but also a collision of spiritual pressure. Just when the captain-level Shinigami tried hard to see the details of the collision between Aizen Sasuke and Senju Makao, Senraman in Makao Senju's hand suddenly changed his moves, and forcibly pressed Kyokushuigetsu to one side. Senju Makao's left hand suddenly had a lot of green grass clinging to condense into a knife, and suddenly slashed towards Aizen Sasuke's chest. This sudden change was so fast that even Aizen Sasuke didn't react. His special Aori was cut open instantly, and then, puff! A splash of bright red blood splashed from Aizen Sasuke. This bright red scene shocked countless Shinigami, and they felt that the abyss that had always been heavy on their heads was broken open, and a ray of hope was reflected in the sun. And this way of fighting, not only did some Shinigami look at Unohana-Retsu, but even Unohana-Retsu showed a bright smile on his face, feeling quite proud. However, Aizen Sasuke's movements did not pause because of the injury. Instead, he took advantage of the momentum to pull back and raised his palm towards Senju Makao. Hado 90. Black coffin. The black coffin, which looked almost like a black hole from a distance, suddenly appeared in the sky and instantly enveloped Senju Makao's figure. And this is not over yet. Unlike the arrogance of just breaking the chant to deal with other Shinigami, Aizen Sasuke used the chant described later to supplement the power of Senju Makao, who was already sealed in the black coffin. The emblem that faintly reveals the turbidity, the unruly and arrogant talent, the crawling iron princess, the clay doll that constantly hurts itself, know your own powerlessness. In an instant, the black coffin that was originally like a black hole lying across the sky above the Seireitei became obviously deeper and more terrifying. However, just when the power of the black coffin was about to explode, countless shadow blades crisscrossed and destroyed the sealed objects. Boom! With an astonishing loud noise, the top of the black coffin was suddenly broken, and then a lifelike wooden giant hand that seemed to cover the sky appeared in front of everyone. What? Aizen Sasuke's expression was lost, as if he had never expected that the black coffin, which had been strengthened by the later chant, would be broken in this way. At this time, a gentle voice full of youthfulness also echoed in the Seireitei. Bankai. Mori no Kabatsu. Chapter 703. The 99 Five Dragons of the Broken Path. Chapter 703. The 99th Path of the Broken Path. The Five Dragons Transmigration. Bankai. Morihiji Buddha. The next moment, the black coffin that looked like a black hole visibly swelled from the inside out, and then shattered with a bang, revealing the object that was completely insufficient to seal it. It was a wooden giant Buddha, with one hand pointing to the sky and the other to the ground, sitting cross-legged in the sky, and behind it seemed to be countless Buddha's hands forming circles of wooden halos. Moreover, the size of the wooden giant Buddha was still increasing crazily, and almost in an instant it surpassed the dead tree that Number Naught had once transformed into. Soon, the size of the wooden giant Buddha itself completely surpassed the entire Seireitei. Until the top of the wooden giant Buddha's head reached the end of the sky, and the area of the lower body where it sat cross-legged seemed to exceed the area of Seireitei itself. With the vastness of Soul Society, at this moment all the residents of Rukongeda witnessed the existence of the wooden giant Buddha. Even though all the Shinigami knew that it was the rumored Bankai, Morihiji Kabatsu, of Vice Captain Makao Senju, it instantly triggered all the Shinigami's instinctive fear of giants. It was too big. So big, it was completely boundless, as if the wooden giant Buddha could completely wipe out the entire Seireitei with a single move. In front of such a majestic thing, it seemed as if all obstacles and enemies were completely meaningless. Aizen Sasuke, who was still emitting the aura that still made the entire Seireitei fall into despair, seemed to be just a conspicuous speck of dust in front of the boundless wooden giant Buddha. The next moment, Aidan Sussex' voice full of disbelief rang out, and his figure slowly retreated uncontrollably. How could such a power exist? No, I don't believe it. You are just your god of death, but I have completely surpassed the existence of gods of death. How could I lose to you? How could I lose to a mere god of death like you? Then, as if the Hinny was also responding to Aidan Sussex' spiritual pressure surged wildly again, until the gods of death seemed to have completely lost the sense of Aidan Sussex' spiritual pressure. The only way to judge the specific changes in the intensity of Aidan Sussex' spiritual pressure was that the special feathered fabric on Aidan Sussex' body, which was transformed by the materialized spiritual pressure, was constantly growing and lengthening. Facing the absolute behemoth that almost made the witnesses completely lose the will to resist, Aidan Sussex did not make that meaningless slash. Moreover, Aidan Sussex was also very clear that the wooden giant Buddha in front of him had a very strong self-repairing ability. The siege of thousands of achukas could not make the wooden giant Buddha completely collapse. In contrast, Aidan Sussex condensed his palm towards the wooden giant Buddha in front of him, took a deep breath, and the terrifying spiritual pressure turned into a storm that swirled around Aidan Sussex endlessly, and he recited the name of the ultimate broken way. The 99 broken ways, 5 dragons turned to extinction. In an instant, a large area of blue light with Aidan Sussex as the center spread wildly, almost instantly covering the entire Jinglingshan in the dazzling blue light that was difficult to look at. Then, the blue light exuding a breath of destruction compressed and condensed wildly, but it turned into 5 materialized spiritual pressure dragons. Go! With Aidan Sussex' rather inappropriate shout, the 5 spiritual pressure dragons that seemed to be injected with all of Aidan Sussex' spiritual pressure let out a faint roar, and then roared towards the wooden giant Buddha. This scene, an astonishing scene that has never been recorded in the history of the 13th Division of the Gotti for thousands of years, made countless Shinigami sweat profusely and stared at the changes in the sky. And the 5 giant dragons of spiritual pressure that made countless Shinigami feel that they would be destroyed in an instant also had the momentum to climb up along the wooden giant Buddha and then destroy the entire wooden giant Buddha. The collision between the two sides was right in front of them. However, just when the 5 giant dragons of spiritual pressure were about to touch the wooden giant Buddha, the sky darkened. Even the Rukongei, which was numbered 50 inches front of the Seireitei, felt that the sky was dark in an instant. The wooden giant palm that was enough to cover the sky of the sun was now so numerous that it covered the entire sky, and it was coming with the momentum of a meteorite falling and destroying the world. Whether it was the residents of Rukongei or the Shinigami of the Seireitei, witnessing the scene that seemed to destroy the world, most of them almost instinctively let out meaningless screams. The 5 dragons of spiritual pressure that represented the ultimate meaning of the broken way, and the 5 dragons of spiritual pressure that Aidan Sussex poured all his spiritual pressure into, were caught by 5 wooden giant hands at the same time when they were about to touch the wooden giant Buddha. Pa. Pa. Pa pa pa. 5 consecutive sounds, as if huge bubbles were forcibly broken. The 5 dragons of spiritual pressure were instantly crushed after being caught by the wooden giant hands. No, impossible. Aidan Sussex said instinctively, and then suddenly looked up. One after another, wooden giant hands appeared in front of Aidan Sussex, and those countless wooden giant hands blasted towards Aidan Sussex's position at 365 degrees. Boom boom boom. Those giant hands that were comparable to fallen meteorites, and even ignited raging fire under their friction with the air, madly blasted towards Aidan Sussex's position. Each roar caused the entire Seireitei to vibrate, and the sound spread far and wide, even reaching every corner of Soul Society. 1 breath, 3 breaths, 10 breaths, the originally dull expressions of the Shinigami who witnessed this scene gradually changed. They swallowed their saliva carefully, and felt cold all over. The terrifying intensity of the attack in the air was beyond their control. Let alone whether they could withstand it. If it really landed on the ground, perhaps they should consider whether Seireitei could withstand it, or even whether the entire Soul Society could withstand it. It was not until nearly 30 breaths that the devastating wooden giant palm completely stopped. As for Aidan Sussex, who was at the center of the series of terrifying attacks, it seemed that he was annihilated in the series of attacks. Not only his spiritual pressure, but also his spiritual body had been completely smashed into powder. Win, win. Great, great. Aidan, the guy is finally killed. Just as cheers rang out from all over the Seireitei, Aidan Sussex's spiritual pressure came crashing down again. With the mirror flower and water moon slowly falling from the sky as the center, Aidan Sussex almost recovered in the form of retrospection. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 704 Cheng, welcome back. For a moment, the cheers of the 13th squad of Shinigami stopped abruptly, and they stared blankly at Aizen Sasuke in the air. Even his spirit seemed to be completely smashed into dust, but he could actually recover. This scene was obviously beyond common sense, and even far exceeded the limit of the so-called super speed regeneration. The next moment, a mighty sound rang out from the seemingly endless wooden giant Buddha. Is this the power of the Hinyu, Aizen? Yes. Are you a little disappointed? It's a pity that you can't kill me. Aizen Sasuke replied. Really? The wooden giant Buddha moved again faintly, and the part that was originally consumed by the ring composed of thousands of giant palms behind it was replenished and restored at a speed visible to the naked eye. It seems that Captain Aizen did not hide the Hojoku in his spirit, but integrated the Hojoku into his zanpakutō. In other words, Aizen Sasuke's real fatal weakness is his zanpakutō, right? Then if Captain Aizen's spirit has completely shattered once again and your zanpakutō is sealed, can Captain Aizen's immortality still work? As soon as these words came out, the spiritual pressure emanating from Aizen Sasuke's body obviously sank, and his face was also gloomy, as if he had been poked at some pain point. Seeing that the giant palm ring behind the wooden giant Buddha was about to be fully restored, Aizen Sasuke spoke with a hint of unwillingness in his tone. Senju Cheng, this will never be the end. Our days are still long. Let's see how long you can protect the Seireitei. As Aizen Sasuke's voice fell, his fingers casually pulled behind him, and a black cavity appeared behind Aizen Sasuke. Then, Aizen Sasuke slowly retreated into the black cavity, leaving a word with a distant look. I look forward to seeing you next time, Makoto-kun and all the ants. The next moment, a huge wooden palm slammed down towards the location of the black cavity, but just when it was a hair's breadth away, the black cavity was completely closed. Aizen Sasuke's figure and spiritual pressure also completely disappeared in the Seireitei. Stark, Byakugan and Ulquiorra, the three remaining tennis-batter, also left with him. Until this moment, with Aizen Sasuke's terrifying spiritual pressure completely dissipated, the Shinigami of the 13th Gotti squad reacted in a trance. 1. Maybe the process was quite tragic, but in terms of the result, it was a miraculous reversal after all. Vice Captain Senju actually forced Aizen Sasuke to retreat, and truly saved the Soul Society. For a moment, the first reaction of many Shinigami was not to cheer, but to collapse to the ground to digest the news. However, some relatively sharp Shinigami gradually reacted. In addition to the final victory of the war, the entire Gotti 13 will also usher in a major change. At this moment, Makoto Senju, who was standing on the head of the wooden giant Buddha, seemed to relax on the surface, but his eyes were obscurely sweeping towards the air not far ahead. There was the outermost barrier of the Ghost Barrier among the 72 barriers between the Soul King Palace and the Soul Society. It was through those 72 barriers that the Soul King Palace was completely isolated from the Soul Society, and it was difficult for other beings to reach it. Moreover, Makoto Senju could vaguely feel that behind the invisible barrier, there were several eyes looking at him. Zero Squad. Makoto Senju already had the answer in his heart. However, this was exactly what Senju Makoto wanted. He deliberately placed himself in the place closest to the Soul King Palace in Soul Society, so that the Zero Squad could observe and look at him to their heart's content, thus eliminating unnecessary suspicion. After all, the next move would inevitably affect the entire Seireitei and the Gotti 13. Senju Makoto didn't want to attract several members of the Zero Squad to confirm his danger at the critical moment because of his own reasons. By then, if there were several members of the Zero Squad in the way, it would be really difficult to kill them, and it would be quite troublesome to fool them. Instead of that, Senju Makoto might as well send himself to the place closest to the Zero Squad and satisfy their curiosity to his heart's content. As long as he didn't use the power of name, Senju Makoto, who was extremely proficient in the way of return and medical skills, was quite sure of his spirit body, and that he couldn't detect any problems with his naked eyes or perception ability. The only conclusion that the Zero Squad can draw is that Senju Makoto is a resurrected Shinigami under the influence of the power of the King's Seal, and without releasing the King's Seal, he used part of the power of the King's Seal to forcibly raise the power of his Senbon Bancho to repel Aizen Sasuke. Moreover, Aizen Sasuke is not dead or sealed, and with the degree of danger shown by Aizen Sasuke, Senju Cheng will inevitably attract most of the attention. Take a good look, everyone, otherwise, when we meet later, the adults of the Zero Squad may not be able to look down at me and observe me so leisurely, Senju Cheng said silently in his heart, but on the surface he was breathing heavily, showing a very exhausted look to release his bankai. Suddenly, the wooden giant Buddha that was across the entire Seireitei quickly dissipated, and the sunlight that was blocked by the wooden giant Buddha also fell back into the Seireitei, bringing a little warmth to the many surviving death gods. When Senju Cheng slowly fell back into the Seireitei, many captains and vice-captains came to greet him. Especially after Senju Cheng's extensive treatment before, although there was no way to make up for their spiritual pressure and physical consumption, their injuries were undoubtedly basically recovered. Makao-kun, long time no see. Kachikabyukaya said with a little reserve. On the contrary, Hizajishui, who was always cold and calm, lost his composure and said with tears that could not be suppressed. Senju-sama, I finally waited for your return. Unohana Retsu, who was standing in the front, said with a smile in his eyes. Makao, welcome back. In addition, there were also looks from Shinigami or Quincy such as Hitsuge Toshiro, Kurosaki Ichigo, Ishida, etc., who were not familiar with Senju Cheng on the surface. Those different looks were mixed with curiosity, admiration, longing, and doubt. In response, Senju Cheng showed a gentle and innocent smile on his face, and then scratched his head gently and said, Everyone, although I don't know much about the current situation, and there are some new faces, I'm really happy to see you again. Yes, Makao, the situation is more complicated and serious than you imagined. Fortunately, you revived and repelled Aizen, otherwise I am afraid that the Seireitei, and even the whole world would fall into the hands of Aizen Sasuke. Unohana Retsu explained the current situation to Senju Cheng, and in this way, implicitly and naturally, he once again affirmed Senju Cheng's contribution to everyone. Chapter 705 The situation has changed. Chapter 705 The situation has changed. Senju Cheng said a little embarrassedly. Unohana-sensei, you are too kind. I seem to have caused a lot of trouble for everyone, right? I'm able to survive, thank you all very much. Indeed, Makao-kun sacrificed himself without saying a word. He clearly promised to come back to play chess with me but broke the promise. This is not the way of friendship. Kachikabyukaya replied with a cold face, but the corners of his mouth inadvertently rose. Sorry, Byukaya, I will definitely visit Kachika Courtyard in person later and apologize solemnly. Senju Cheng said with an apologetic face. Kachikabyukaya said coldly. Okay, I will let you know that your chess skills that have been lacking for decades are no longer my opponent. Let the defeat be engraved on your body as a punishment for breaking the promise. Yes, Senju Cheng echoed his friends including Kachikabyukaya a little embarrassedly, and maintained the style of doing things in the Seireitei as always. Gentle and kind, his eyes were a little confused as he looked at everyone and the changes in the surrounding environment, like a person who had just woken up after sleeping for decades, flawless and low-key. Of course, with the scene of Senju Cheng repelling Aizen Sasuke like a saint not long ago, no one would really think that Senju Cheng was just a harmless healing god of death. However, Senju Cheng's memory-like demeanor and reaction undoubtedly quickly brought him closer to many familiar people, allowing the various good impressions of Senju Cheng in his memory to quickly merge with Senju Cheng himself. Seeing that the atmosphere of reuniting with Senju Cheng after a long absence seemed to be getting more and more warm, Unohana Retsu coughed lightly and spoke. Let's talk about the past later. There are still some important issues that must be resolved now. Hearing this, Hitsuge Toshiro frowned and spoke subconsciously. What's the problem? Is there any enemy hiding in the Seireitei? As soon as these words came out, everyone present subconsciously took a vigilant posture, tensed up, and even looked at everyone around them warily. A thought subconsciously popped up in their minds, mirror flower and water moon. So much so that, under the serious shadow left by Aizen Sasuke, everyone unconsciously doubted whether everything in front of them was also an illusion, including the scene where Senju Cheng repelled Aizen Sasuke. Seeing this, Unohana Retsu spoke. Many Shinigami, including Captain General Yamamoto, are still in the world, and the time for Karakura Town to be transferred to Soul Society has almost reached the warning line. The humans with spiritual power in Karakura Town have begun to wake up one after another, and once they come into contact with the residents of Rukongai, it may cause a series of chaos. For a moment, the already panic-stricken Shinigami and the extremely leadership-like Unohana formed a sharp contrast. And the expressions of everyone were undoubtedly a little embarrassed. After all, during this series of changes, everyone almost subconsciously forgot about the many Shinigami who are still in the world, including Captain Yamamoto. However, in Senju Makoto's opinion, this indirectly proved the change in Captain Yamamoto's prestige in the GOTY 13. At least, from this moment on, Captain Yamamoto could no longer be the absolute core and pillar of the entire Seireitei. The situation changed. Then, Unohana, who had truly established his prestige, began to command all kinds of post-war processing work in an orderly manner. As the captain for 1,000 years, Unohana's familiarity with the entire GOTY 13 and Seireitei was undoubtedly second only to Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. Therefore, all the squads, departments, and institutions in Seireitei that were still able to operate normally began to assume operation under Unohana's command. The most important thing was undoubtedly to exchange the real Karakura town with the Karakura town in the real world through the reincarnation pillar. Unohana entrusted this mission to Makoto Senju, who led the Kid Mushu and the 12th Division to jointly carry out. When Makoto Senju and other Shinigami arrived at Karakura town, some humans with extremely strong spiritual power had already awakened, and quite a few of them were students taught by Makoto Senju. Arisawa Ryuki, Asano Kigo, Kojima Mijiro, in order to ensure that there would be no accident when transferring back to the real world in Karakura town, that is, these awake humans would not fall into the Dankai and get lost, and fail to return to the real world with Karakura town. Therefore, the mission of the 12th Division, which assisted the Kid Mushu to arrive in Karakura town, was to ensure that all humans in Karakura town were in a coma. Let me take care of those humans, and you go search other areas. Makoto Senju pointed his finger in the direction of Arisawa Ryuki and others, and said, "Yes, Master Senju." The members of the 12th Division following Makoto Senju said respectfully, and then searched and confirmed in different directions of Karakura town. At this moment, Arisawa Ryuki, Asano Kigo, and Kojima Mijiro are nervously hugging each other, walking cautiously on the familiar streets in the past. However, the streets that used to be bustling were filled with strange silence. "It's obviously daytime. Why is there no one?" Asano Kigo said in a trembling voice. "No, it's not that there is no one, but everyone is asleep." Arisawa Ryuki, who was standing in the front, corrected calmly. Kojima Mijiro said with a frightened face. "Ah. Ryuki, your explanation is even more terrifying, and the sky seems to be different from the normal sky." Arisawa Ryuki pondered for a while and said, "So, the only explanation, it is very likely that this is no longer the real world." At this moment, a gentle voice suddenly sounded behind them. "No, this is the real world, but it's too early for you to come into contact with this reality." Arisawa Ryuki and others were chilled, and when they were about to turn around and look behind them, they felt a slight pain in the back of their necks and fell unconscious. Looking at Arisawa Ryuki and others who collapsed on the street, Senju Makoto's eyes revealed a hint of farewell. Then, Senju Makoto carried Arisawa Ryuki, who was a girl, back to her home and placed her on the bed. Then, after Senju Makoto confirmed that there was no one around, he slowly closed Arisawa Ryuki's door. The next moment, Senju Makoto stretched out his palm forward and inserted it strangely into the air. No, to be more precise, it was inserted into the independent space created by Senju Makoto in the shadow of the Seireitei. Then, Senju Makoto's eyes condensed, and the other hand was raised, and inserted into a shadow space somewhere in Soul Society, looking for a suitable coordinate point to extend the independent space he created. Chapter 706. The back door between Soul Society and the real world. This independent space hidden in the shadow of Karakura town has its own unique coordinates. That is why it is almost impossible for others to find this independent space before others know this unique coordinate. Before, Makoto Senju only used this independent space as a secret base to conduct various experiments. Now that he has returned to Soul Society under the name of Makoto Senju, the biggest challenge he faces is undoubtedly how to maintain the continued fusion of the body with the instrument. After all, Makoto Senju, who will undoubtedly become the absolute core senior of the GOTY 13 inches the future, can't run to the human world every now and then. And this is the solution that Makoto Senju chose after careful consideration. The left hand stabilizes the unique coordinates of Makoto's secret garden to keep it connected to Karakura town itself. The right hand is looking for a suitable coordinate in Soul Society, and then controls Makoto's secret garden to begin to extend. In essence, Makaotao's secret garden is a three-dimensional space hidden in a certain point. It can maintain a complete world in the shadow, and it can also be extracted from the coordinates in the shadow and appear in the real world. Of course, in this case, it is inevitable that Makaotao's secret garden will blend with Karakura Town in a unique form. Now, what Senju Makaotao has done is to try to make Makaotao's secret garden have two coordinates at the same time, so that the shadow area where Makaotao's secret garden exists will change from a point to a line. In this way, this will make Makaotao's secret garden a hidden passage connecting Soul Society and Karakura Town in a sense, and Senju Makaotao can also maintain the efficiency of the fusion of instrument through Makaotao's secret garden. And because Karakura Town itself is in Soul Society, it is not difficult for Senju Makaotao to add a coordinate to Makaotao's secret garden. The real difficulty lies in the moment when Karakura Town is transferred back to the real world. Senju Makaotao needs to maintain that Makaotao's secret garden will not collapse due to the change in the distance between the two coordinates. Therefore, after Senju Makaotao initially completed the connection of Makaotao's secret garden to the Soul Society coordinates, his hands remained inserted into the void. After Senju Makaotao waited for a moment. Here it comes. Senju Makaotao's expression revealed a bit of seriousness, sensing the invisible space fluctuations spreading throughout the entire Karakura Town. Of course, this kind of space fluctuation is not mandatory. As long as the target with spiritual power consciously resists, it will avoid being included in the coverage of this space fluctuation. It is precisely for this reason that Senju Makaotao needs to lead the 12th Division to complete the search inside Karakura Town. To prevent some humans with spiritual power and awake from subconsciously resisting the space fluctuations formed by the reincarnation pillar, and thus staying directly in the Seireitei or falling into the sundered world halfway. The next moment, everything around Senju Makaotao turned into a blur and disappeared in an instant. Instead, there was a ruined wall with flames still burning everywhere, and large pieces of dead wood binding one god of death after another. However, seeing the tragic battlefield in front of him, Senju Makaotao showed flawless shock and grief on his face, and there was a hint of joy in the depths of his eyes. The envisioned plan is feasible. Makaotao's secret garden did not collapse. After being transferred back to the real world in Karakura Town, it still maintained the connection to the two coordinates at the same time. In this way, through this unique method, Makaotao's secret garden has become an independent space that exists in the shadows of the real world and the Soul Society at the same time. If Senju Makaotao wants to walk between the real world and the Soul Society, he no longer needs to pass through the gate, but can easily reach different worlds through Makaotao's secret garden. In a sense, this can be regarded as a back door that Senju Makaotao opened in the Soul Society and the real world that can be entered and exited at will. By the way, should we add another coordinate in Hutomundo at the same time? In this way, if we want to go to Hutomundo to find Aizen-kun in the future, we don't have to worry about being discovered by others. As this thought flashed through Senju Makaotao's mind, his hands quickly liberated everything and carried out the second purpose of his trip, to gain fame. In an instant, the battlefield that was just full of flames, lava, and dead trees was covered with a layer of green grass full of vitality at a speed visible to the naked eye. The green grass seemed to have independent consciousness, entwining the unconscious or seriously injured Shinigami. For a moment, the green light lit up again in various places on the battlefield, and the injuries on the spirits of many injured Shinigami were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. The onlookers, the ghosts and the 12th Division members, although they had witnessed a similar scene in the Seireitei not long ago, still felt a heartfelt shock. Pain, injury, death, it seemed that under the power of that adult, they were all being quickly driven away. A Shinigami looked at Senju Makaotao, who was standing in the center of the battlefield and controlling countless green grasses, with a burning gaze, and unconsciously sighed. Jane is just like a god, merciful and healing everything. However, those who witnessed this scene that seemed to heal everything did not know that the green grass that emitted green light and healed the wounded was not just healing. Some of the Shinigami who should not have lived died silently on the battlefield. While the injuries of more Shinigami were healed, there were also spirit particles similar to forest seeds that merged into their bodies. For Senju Makaotao, who has now passed the stage of accumulating spiritual power, he no longer needs forest seeds to collect the scattered spiritual power. However, those special spirit particles similar to forest seeds can ensure Senju Makaotao's monitoring and positioning of them, avoid some unnecessary troubles, and better screen whether there are Shinigami who are completely loyal to the Zero Division. Then, the seriously injured Shinigami who fell into a coma woke up one after another. And in the center of the battlefield, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, who was already on his deathbed, felt a warmth enveloping his spirit that seemed to have become powerless and cold. Especially the wound pierced through the chest by Aizen Sasuke, he could clearly feel a surge of heat. The next moment, relying on his tenacious will, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni suddenly opened his eyes, and his 5 fingers subconsciously tightly grasped his zanpakutō. However, what Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni saw was not the battlefield filled with flames, but a smiling face that only existed in his memory and exuded a pure and warm smile. Chapter 707. The Captain's Decline. Captain, you're awake? Senju Cheng's face showed a deep surprise, and then he hurriedly asked with concern. Captain, don't act yet. Your injuries are quite serious. Although the external injuries have been basically healed, your internal organs are also under heavy pressure and shock. It will take quite a while to recuperate. A trace of confusion appeared in the majestic eyes of Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. Just at that moment, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni even thought that his soul had arrived in hell, so he could meet this junior whom he once admired so much again. However, the information revealed in Senju Cheng's words and the information collected from the surrounding environment made Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni suddenly think of a possibility and asked. Vice Captain Senju, are you really revived? Yes, thanks to the efforts of Unohana-sensei, Kachika-kun and Shuei. Senju Cheng answered, while his hands were shining with the light of Udayo, wanting to give Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni further treatment. However, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni suddenly tightened his grip on Senju Cheng's wrist and asked. Where's Aizen? How's the situation? Senju Cheng answered gently. Captain, don't worry, Aizen Sasuke has been repelled. Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni heard this, his brows still not relaxed, and asked. Who repelled Aizen Sasuke? Senju Cheng answered with a trace of embarrassment on his face. This, with the assistance of many captains, I used part of the power of the king to repel Aizen Sasuke by chance. Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni's expression was stunned, and he looked at Senju Cheng in front of him in a trance. After a few breaths, Senju Cheng looked at Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, who was still a little stunned, and asked carefully. Captain, do you feel uncomfortable? Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, who came to his senses, loosened his grip on Senju Cheng's palm, patted Senju Cheng's shoulder, and said. No, I'm fine. Senju Cheng seemed to have thought of something, and spoke nervously and hurriedly. Captain, if you feel any discomfort in your spirit, please tell me immediately. The God 13 is still counting on you to lead. Suddenly, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni's movements paused for a moment, and then he ignored Senju Cheng's persuasion, but sat up on his own and said. Don't underestimate me, this level of injury is not a big deal. Then, Captain, please allow me to examine you further. Senju Cheng asked with concern in his tone. No need. Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni waved his hand and said in an unquestionable tone. I'm fine now, Vice Captain Senju, go and see how Captain Kiku and Captain Yukitiku are doing. Senju Cheng's face showed a trace of entanglement, and then he responded and hurriedly went in the direction of Kiku Shunsui and Yukitiku Joshiro. However, at the moment when Senju Cheng turned around, the corner of his mouth tilted up in a very subtle way. At this moment, Senju Cheng clearly felt a sense of old age from Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. It was not the sense of aging that emanated from the spirit body as in the past, but the old age that came from the soul. The contact between Senju Cheng and Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni just now was essentially to further explain a fact in a subtle way of the most tense moment after Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni was defeated. Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, the god of death who maintained the title of the strongest in 1,000 years, was old after all. The enemy he could not defeat was defeated by a younger god of death. For Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, the proud and domineering strongest god of death in his old age, that kind of shock and blow was undoubtedly worse than the mental injury on his spirit body. Therefore, Makoto Senju wisely left Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni some space and time to be alone, which also allowed Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni to think carefully. For that current God 13, the position of the Captain General, must he be the one? As the battlefield was transferred from the real world back to the Seireitei, the members of the 4th Division, who needed to prepare many treatment tools, also arrived in time to begin to examine the wounded one by one. After all, the large-scale treatment ability demonstrated by Makoto Senju Shinraisai is undoubtedly mainly for external injuries, and the members of the 4th Division need to conduct a thorough examination with Kido. As for the captain-level Shinigami such as Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, they have already been given priority to be examined by the 4th Division's chief officers. As Makoto Senju still retains the position of vice-captain of the 4th Division, he has undoubtedly become a flawless existence in the eyes of all the members of the 4th Division. Resurrected in despair, and then saved the entire Seireitei from the abyss of destruction. Character, appearance, Kido, fighting power, each of them is absolutely perfect in the entire Seireitei. As the vice-captain of the 4th Division, Makoto Senju was not arrogant in front of many new and old team members. He kept busy and ran around to personally check the conditions of each wounded, and gave instructions to the team members from time to time. Soon, in the admiring eyes of many 4th Division members, Makoto Senju had a thorough confirmation of the conditions of those main captains. Kakushansui, the lock knot and the soul sleep were all broken. Although Makoto Senju showed a miraculous level of Kido in front of the team members, he could only barely repair a small part and retain some spiritual power. Not to the extent of being reduced to the level of an ordinary Rukongei resident. Even if he continued to live in Seireitei, he would not be able to withstand the spiritual pressure of the other Shinigami. As for Jikitijashiro's problem, in addition to the external injuries, the more serious thing is that the whole person seems to have been sucked dry, and he looks completely skin and bones. Therefore, even if Makoto Senju cured Jikitijashiro's injuries, Jikitijashiro was still in a deep coma, and it would probably take a very long time for him to recover his ability to walk. In addition, there are Shinigami such as Hirako Makoto, Komamura Sujin, and Road Guru Meikensei, who were in much better condition. In less than half a day, after the efforts of Makoto Senju and many members of the 4th Division, the casualties of this war were officially counted. When Makoto Senju handed the casualty report to Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, his eyes clearly showed grief. When Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni read the casualty report in detail, he fell silent. Perhaps, on the surface, the number of captain-level Shinigami who died this time was not large, but the price paid by the GOTY 13th Division was undoubtedly extremely tragic. In addition to the death of Urehara Kisuke, Kakushansui, who was once valued by Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, completely lost his captain-level combat power, and Jikitijashiro's body was no longer suitable for being a captain. There were also a large number of core Shinigami at the vice-captain and seat officer level, headed by Seireitei Zeman, who died in large numbers. Chapter 708 Acting Captain. It can be said that this has completely reduced the apparent combat power of the 13th Court Guard Division to a precarious point. Is this still the 13th Court Guard Division led by this old man? It has actually fallen to this point? Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni held the hand holding the casualty report and subconsciously squeezed it. Seeing this, Senju Makoto's face showed a guilty look, and he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, Captain General, I have tried my best to treat the wounded, but it's still a little late for some of them." Otherwise, before Senju Makoto could finish, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni sighed and interrupted. "No, it's not your fault, Vice-Captain Senju, you have done a good job. If it weren't for your unique and powerful healing ability, I'm afraid the death toll would have doubled." After a pause, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni raised his hand and patted Senju Makoto on the shoulder, then stood up and said, "It is I who need to bear all the responsibility for the failure and sacrifice of this war." Senju Makoto seemed a little shocked and tried to persuade him. "Captain General, how can this be? Besides, it was under your leadership that the GOTY 13 defended Karakura town and protected the safety of Seireitei. Even without your support, I would not have the opportunity to recover." However, these words, which seemed to be sincere and frank from the heart of Senju Makoto, stabbed into the heart of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni like a sharp knife. Defending Karakura town, protecting Seireitei, and even Senju Makoto's recovery had nothing to do with Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni. Even because of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's defeat in the real world, the entire GOTY 13 lost almost all its combat power, and the situation took a sharp turn for the worse and was on the verge of collapse. This made Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's eyebrows tremble slightly, and he didn't know what to say to the deputy captain Makoto Senju, who seemed to admire him. After a long time, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni sighed. "I'm old after all. In the future, the GOTY 13 will also need more outstanding juniors to support it. Deputy Captain Senju, please encourage yourself." "Ah?" Senju Makoto's expression was a little sluggish for a moment, and then he said quickly, "Captain General, you are still strong and vigorous. It's too early to say these words. Unohana teacher just sent me a message, and also asked me to invite you to return to the Seireitei as soon as possible to preside over the overall situation and stabilize people's hearts. Stabilize people's hearts? Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni shook his head and said, there is no better way to stabilize people's hearts than victory, so if you want to stabilize people's hearts, you just need to return to the Seireitei as soon as possible. As for taking charge of the overall situation, at this point, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni hesitated for a moment, and spoke to Chojiro Suzuki beside him. Chojiro. Yes. Chojiro Suzuki, who had just received treatment, responded quickly. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni spoke slowly. You can return to the Seireitei and take charge for a while on my behalf. As soon as these words came out, both Senju Cheng and Chojiro Suzuki showed surprise, as if they did not understand what Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni meant. And, convey an order to the entire GOTY 13 on my behalf, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni closed his eyes slightly and took a few breaths, feeling the weakness and aging revealed from his internal organs, and spoke slowly. Appoint the captain of the 4th Division, Unohana Retsu, to temporarily take over the position of the Captain General of the 13th Division and the Captain of the 1st Division, and preside over the overall decision-making of the Seireitei. In an instant, all the Shinigami around Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni fell into a moment of silence. This order almost meant that Unohana Retsu was appointed as the Captain General. Even Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni refused to return to the Seireitei, and the meaning was self-evident. The purpose was to verify whether Unohana Retsu had the ability to lead the 13th Division. Once Unohana Retsu could restore the normal operation of the 13th Division in an orderly manner, then when the situation stabilized, Unohana Retsu would truly take over the position of the Captain General and the Captain of the 1st Division. And Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's closed eyes revealed a slit, and he could see the changes in the expressions of the surrounding Shinigami at this moment. Most of the Shinigami were shocked, but did not show any protest or resistance. Suzuki Chojiro was shocked but reacted quickly, lowering his head to accept the order. As for Senju Cheng, he was shocked and did not react for a long time. He looked at Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni blankly and said subconsciously, how can this be? Captain General, the GOTY 13 cannot do without you. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni heard this and shook his head and said, the GOTY 13 that I founded was originally just to resist the attack of the Stern-Crossed Knights led by Ithwachon Soul Society. That war was also a bitter victory. It is true that the GOTY 13 won the final victory, but it also caused irreparable disasters in Soul Society. Countless residents of Rukongai died in that war. In order to make up for the mistakes, I have learned from my mistakes and decided to reform the GOTY 13. I hope that the GOTY 13 can guard the Seireitei and protect the countless lives under the Seireitei. Therefore, the GOTY 13 will never be unable to operate because of the absence of someone, but I did try my best to support the GOTY 13 for 1,000 years. At this point, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's voice changed, and his slender and majestic eyes looked directly at Senju Cheng and said, Vice Captain Senju Cheng. Yes. Senju Cheng responded quickly. I hope that the GOTY 13 can be revitalized in the hands of Captain Unohana, and I also hope that the GOTY 13 can continue to grow and prosper. Do you understand? Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni asked. Senju Cheng pondered for a moment, met Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's eyes, and answered seriously. Yes, Captain General, I will remember the original words in my heart and then relay them to Unohana teacher. Very good. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni understood that Senju Cheng had understood what he meant, and nodded with satisfaction. In a sense, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was forced to decide to give up the power and responsibilities of the Captain General so quickly. If it was just Unohana Retsu, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni might have considered it. However, Senju Cheng's recovery and the record of Repelles and Sosok have undoubtedly made the prestige of Unohana Retsu and Senju Cheng in the Seireitei reach a peak. Chapter 709 Thinking of Death, Thinking of Life, Working. In this case, even if Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni decided to continue to serve as the Captain General, he would face the dilemma of not having many captain-level combat forces under his command, and the combat power and prestige of Unohana Retsu and Senju Cheng would surpass Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. Therefore, even if Senju Cheng showed pure respect and had no intention of fighting for power, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni also understood that it was just a result of decency. In this way, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, who had no desire for power and status, after a little consideration, realized that this seemed to be an excellent opportunity to transition to the position of Captain General, and it would not cause instability within the GOTY 13 and the Seireitei. Without the central 46 chambers and the existence of the traditional aristocratic class, this can also avoid a lot of troubles in the distribution of interests and checks and balances, and only need to consider the stability within the GOTY 13. However, with Unohana Retsu's current prestige, it is obvious that there will be no instability within the GOTY 13. In this way, what Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was most concerned about was that besides Unohana Retsu, it seemed that it was not impossible to directly choose Senju Makoto as the Captain General. However, although Senju Makoto's current combat power seemed to be stronger than himself and Unohana Retsu, Senju Makoto had never served as a captain, and his experience as a vice captain was only a few decades, which was too shallow. What's more, Senju Makoto had just revived, and the Seireitei had gone through decades of changes, and he was undoubtedly an unsuitable candidate. This made Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, who had seen many breakups due to power struggles, a little worried about whether Senju Makoto would have any resentment, so he deliberately tested and comforted Senju Makoto. As for the result, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was undoubtedly quite satisfied. Compared with his two direct disciples, Kakushinsui and Jikitijashiro, each had its own obvious flaws. Kakushinsui may be good at calculation, know people's hearts, and act cautiously, but his style is too frivolous to convince others, his vision is too narrow, he is too focused on gains and losses, and his strength is also lacking. As for Jikitijashiro, even if he has countless advantages, his weak body is also unable to take on major responsibilities. On the contrary, Senju Makoto is perfect in character, demeanor, ability, combat power, etc. Even after Senju Makoto died, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni sighed secretly many times. Speaking of which, Vice Captain Senju Makoto is, in a sense, a more perfect version of the god of death of Aizen Sosok before his defection. When thinking of this, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's eyes could not help but condense, and a trace of vigilance and suspicion flashed subconsciously. However, as Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's eyes fell on Senju Makoto's face, the pure and gentle eyes made Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's vigilance and suspicion quickly dissipate. I seem to be really old. I was actually left with a shadow by Aizen Sosok in my heart. I actually instinctively doubted Vice Captain Makoto Senju, who proved his loyalty to Seireitei with his life decades ago. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni secretly laughed at himself, and turned to ask Makoto Senju directly. Vice Captain Makoto Senju, with your ability, qualifications, and prestige, you are qualified to succeed the position of Captain of the 4th Division. What do you think? Captain of the 4th Division? Makoto Senju showed just the right amount of surprise on his face, then thought for a while, shook his head, and said, Captain General, I understand what you mean. It's not that I don't want to shoulder the responsibility of being the captain, but I also hope to continue the good story of the Captain General and Vice Captain Suzuki, and continue to assist Unohana-sensei. As the saying goes, flattery never wears out. In the past 1,000 years, the relationship between Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni and Suzachojiro is obviously not an ordinary superior-subordinate relationship, but more like a relationship of friendship mixed with master-apprentice, friends, confidants, etc. Now, when Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni has made up his mind to resign as the captain, Senju Makoto will make it a good story and is determined to give up the position of captain and continue to assist Unohana Retsu. This undoubtedly makes Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni feel a sense of inheritance, and Senju Makoto is completely relieved, confirming that Senju Makoto has no ambition for power and status. After all, even the status of the captain's adjutant is undoubtedly lower than that of the captain. The system of the GOTY 13th Division determines that in addition to the captain having extremely high decision-making power, the other captains are also one of the real decision-making participants. The adjutant is more of an executive, and the captain's meeting is not qualified to participate in it. More importantly, the adjutant can only carry out the captain's will, and his position in the division is ultimately similar to that of a supporting role. Therefore, a god of death who is willing to be a supporting role cannot have any huge ambitions. In that case, then Chojiro, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni turned his head to look at Suzachojiro, and said with a hint of ease in his tone, Then I'll trouble you to hand over all the affairs of the Captain General's adjutant to the hands of Vice Captain Senju. Yes, Captain General. Suzachojiro answered in a serious manner. Don't be so nervous, this is the last task I give you as the Captain General. Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni said. Yes. Chojuro responded, but a smile appeared on his face. Then, after making arrangements for the post-war work on the battlefield, Senju Cheng returned to the Seireitei with Chojuro. When Chojuro, on behalf of Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni, announced that Unohana would temporarily take over the position of Captain General, it undoubtedly caused waves of shock. This also made many Shinigami clearly sense that the Captain General Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni, who had maintained the strongest for 1,000 years, was about to leave. However, it was just as Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni expected. With the shocking record of Unohana and Senju Cheng not long ago, no Shinigami would think that Unohana was not qualified to be the Captain General. More importantly, in this war, Senju Cheng had already secretly eliminated the group of voices that might protest. As long as the opposing voices were prepared in advance, the result would naturally be undoubted approval by all members. There was no opposition, no objection, and no opposition. Except for some of the wounded who were really unable to move, all the existing members of the 13th Division undoubtedly cooperated with Unohana's temporary Captain General work with their actions to jointly maintain the stability and harmony of the Seireitei. Chapter 710 Tianbei 2 days passed. With the Shinigami's physique far superior to that of ordinary humans, the huge post-war work has been preliminarily completed, allowing the entire 13th Division to temporarily return to the right track. However, the most serious problem facing the 13th Division now is that in addition to the sacrifice of a large number of core Shinigami of the chief officers, nearly half of the positions of captain and vice-captain are vacant. This also makes it impossible for many vice-captains or chief officers of the division to make decisions, and they can only submit the corresponding questions in the form of documents to the general division for inquiry. In this way, the real dilemma became Senju Cheng. Except for inviting many friends in the past in the Seireitei to hold a banquet as a celebration of his resurrection, all the rest of the time, Senju Cheng was completely filled with documents. As the real current vice-captain, Chojuro was very aware of his upcoming retirement. Even if he sat next to him drinking tea and meditating, he had no intention of helping to deal with the documents. With Chojuro supervising in the name of handover, Senju had no chance to push all the tedious and fragmentary documents to the third and fourth seats as he did in the past, and assist them in handling them in the name of training them. Senju, with bloodshot eyes, exuded strong resentment, but his hands were reviewing different documents quickly. Regarding this situation, Chojuro spoke sarcastically in the tone of a veteran, saying, "Vice-Captain Senju, you may be a little uncomfortable at first, but the captain can't bury himself in heavy documents, so as an adjutant, you need to have such awareness. I have been through this in the past, and I will get used to it slowly." Senju heard this, and his murderous intent suddenly rose in his heart. At this moment, Senju regretted that he was too soft-hearted not long ago. Because he regarded him as a respected senior in the past, he deliberately spared Chojuro life. Then, Senju continued to review the documents at the same speed and spoke quietly. "Vice-Captain Suzuki, since the establishment of the 13th Division 1,000 years ago, there should not have been such a serious lack of captains." Suddenly, Chojuro's expression froze slightly, and he smiled awkwardly. Indeed, in terms of the intensity of work, at present, Senju not only needs to bear the work of the adjutant of the general division, but also needs to be fully responsible for the work of the 4th Division and the review of a large number of documents for the 3rd, 5th, 8th, and 13th Divisions. What's more, it is in the post-war period, and various personnel vacancies, team member sacrifices, insufficient funds and other problems within each division have been exposed one after another. It is a stage where every captain of the division is extremely troubled. And Senju, in a sense, is almost handling half of the documents of the entire Division 13. This made Chojuro secretly feel lucky that he escaped, and he couldn't help but admire Senju from the bottom of his heart. However, this also made Chojuro feel guilty, and felt that he was a bit inhumane to watch the show leisurely. Then, Chojuro picked up the nearest file without rushing, and sipped tea while assisting Senju in reviewing it. However, Senju had already processed 10 files in the same amount of time, and Chojuro had just processed the first file like a retired old man. This made Senju, who glanced at Chojuro from the corner of his eye, couldn't help but jump the veins on his forehead, and he wanted to roll Chojuro and the table away. However, in order to allow the power of the entire GOTY 13 to be truly complete and smoothly transferred to his hands, Senju Cheng could only bear it and continue to process the files quickly. Be patient. As long as Unohana Teacher officially takes office as the Captain General, then Unohana Teacher can appoint a new captain as the Captain General. Senju Cheng secretly comforted himself. Moreover, processing these documents is not without any benefit. Due to the continuous battles, the GOTY 13 Division has undoubtedly lost a large number of core combat forces at the level of chief officers, and has not been able to fill them in time. Originally, the appointment of chief officer should have been decided by the captains of each division, but since many captains in the GOTY 13 Division are now on strike or vacant, this power has undoubtedly been handed directly to Senju Cheng. Senju Cheng, who had been prepared, did not hesitate at all. Almost according to the list prepared in advance, he naturally placed a large number of Shinigami who absolutely supported Unohana Retsu and had no connection with the nobles of chief officers. In this way, he can further ensure his control over the entire GOTY 13 Division. Suddenly, Senju Cheng paused the speed of processing the documents with both hands, frowned slightly, picked up a document on his left hand and thought about it. Feeling that Senju Cheng's speech suddenly stopped, Chojiro thought that Senju Cheng had encountered something difficult to decide, so he stood up and walked to Senju Cheng's side and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Senju Cheng asked. "Expedition Corps, Amagashusuk." Suzuki Chojiro answered. "It's normal for Vice Captain Senju not to know this. Since the huge cluster of nearly 1,000 Achikas appeared that year, the Central 46th Chamber is worried that such a cluster that may threaten the Seireitei will appear again. So the Expedition Corps system was changed, and the Expedition Corps was established as an organization that permanently stationed at the edge of Hukomundo to hunt Achikas and monitor the number of Achikas. Now the leader of the Expedition Corps is Amagashusuk. It is said that he has a combat power that is not inferior to the captain level." Senju Cheng nodded to indicate that he understood, and then spoke. "This is his application to lead the Expedition Corps back to the Seireitei. He believes that with Aizen Sosok occupying the Hukomundo, it is meaningless and extremely dangerous to continue staying in the edge of the Hukomundo, and he thinks it is more appropriate to return to the Seireitei as a garrison force." Suzuki Chojiro thought for a while and put forward his own opinion. The proposal of Amagashusuk is quite good. The position of captain in the current Seireitei is seriously vacant. With the ability that Amagashusuk showed in the Expeditionary Corps, he is qualified for the position of captain. Senju Cheng heard this, and he was still considering it in his heart. In fact, Senju Cheng knew everything about Amagashusuk's past. He also understood that Amagashusuk returned to Seireitei as captain in the original trajectory, and his goal was actually to assassinate Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni for revenge due to some misunderstandings. However, now Senju Cheng still needs Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni's presence to stabilize Seireitei and confuse the Zero Division, and it is impossible for him to allow Amagashusuk to assassinate Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 711 Soul Burial Ceremony. After considering for a few more breaths, Senju Cheng agreed to Amagashusuk's proposal. In addition to the reasonableness of Amagashusuk's proposal, what's more important is that Amagashusuk is undoubtedly impossible to be a pawn of Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukuni or the Zero Division. Therefore, this also means that Amagashusuk may be worth being won over. Now, Senju Cheng is also worried. In the past 2 days, Unohana Retsu has also been busy maintaining the operation of the GOTY 13. After all, the vacancies of a large number of captain positions have reached a level that cannot be ignored, and the captains of each division must be supplemented as soon as possible. However, even if you look at the current situation of the Seireitei, even a discerning person knows a fact. That is, the large number of captains and vice-captains vacancies in the GOTY 13 are just for the new captain-in-chief to show favor after taking office, so as to cultivate prestige. However, even if you ignore those relatively insignificant positions, the number of vacant captains and vice-captains in the entire GOTY 13 is unprecedented. Captain of the 3rd Division, Captain or Vice-Captain of the 4th Division, Captain of the 5th Division, Vice-Captain of the 7th Division, Captain of the 8th Division, Vice-Captain of the 9th Division, Vice-Captain of the 12th Division, Captain or Vice-Captain of the 13th Division. In addition, after confirming that Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni was about to resign as the Captain General, Captain of the 7th Division, Komamura Sejin, also formally submitted his resignation, requesting that he be allowed to step down as captain at the right time so that he could continue to follow Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni directly. In this way, there are as many as 6 vacancies for captains and 5 vacancies for vice-captains. This makes Makoto Senju a little worried about the selection of personnel to fill the vacant positions. The Masked Corps has been in close contact with Uehara Kisuke for nearly 100 years, and Makoto Senju is not very willing to rudely stuff all the members of the Masked Corps back into the 13th Division of the GOTY to fill the vacancies. Especially for Mako Hirako, who has first-class insight. If he detects something unusual in the Seireitei, it will cause some unexpected trouble. Therefore, for Makoto Hirako, Senju Makoto thinks that the most appropriate arrangement is to keep him in Karakura town in the name of guarding against Aizen Sosuk. The appearance of Amagata Shusuke can slightly ease the trouble of the captain selection. Senju Makoto's mind turned around, and he had a plan to initially try to contact Amagata Shusuke at the time. He once again invested in a tedious document processing work with extremely high efficiency. A week later, the entire surface of the Seireitei has been completely repaired, and more than 90% of the wounded have fully recovered. Regarding the many sacrificed Shinigami, the GOTY 13 also held a corresponding ceremony in the most solemn form to bid farewell to the last journey. Especially as the only captain-level Shinigami who died in this war, Uehara Kisuke, even though Uehara Kisuke still carries a not very glorious reputation. However, under the instruction of the acting Captain General, Makoto Senju, the ceremony was carried out in accordance with the captain's specifications. Even the hero Makoto Senju, who had saved Soul Society many times, personally presided over the soul funeral ceremony for Kisuke Uehara, with a sad look on his face, which caused a sad atmosphere. Even though 99% of the Shinigami who participated in the soul funeral ceremony were not aware of Kisuke Uehara's deeds. However, this did not prevent many Shinigami from looking at Makoto Senju, whose eyes were full of bloodshot and whose face seemed to be haggard and withered due to sadness, with longing eyes, and a burst of empathy in their hearts, which then aroused waves of sadness. For a time, the whole process was filled with a sad and solemn atmosphere. From beginning to end, Makoto Senju only presided over the soul funeral ceremony in a rigid manner, without any extra words or actions, but the back that seemed to be hunched over and leaving made many Shinigami feel a deep admiration for Makoto Senju. Master Senju, that silent sadness, maybe it is the highest level of pain. He silently carried the loss of his friend in this world, and had to continue to carry the burden. This is Master Senju. Master Senju. He is indeed as loyal and gentle as the rumors say. Maybe he didn't say anything, but his heart must be filled with nostalgia for his friend, but, at this moment, Makoto Senju was simply too exhausted. He had been processing a large number of documents without sleep for nearly 10 days. Even if Makoto Senju's body could bear it, his mind was inevitably overloaded, so Makoto Senju's condition naturally did not look very good. However, when Makoto Senju took the lead and walked to the edge of the venue where the soul burial ceremony was held, he paused slightly, looked at the shadow on the side that seemed to be empty, and spoke in comfort. Yoichi, I'm sorry. In the shadow, Yorishi Shuin's face, which showed a bit of sadness, appeared. At first, Yorishi Shuin and Kisuke Uehara were subordinates and friends who trusted each other. Although the relationship between the two parties became distant without them noticing, and then they parted ways, and finally went in completely different directions. However, Yorishi Shuin still couldn't help feeling a little sad for the death of one of her few friends. It's not your fault, Master. Kisuke, that idiot, died at the hands of Aizen, and no one else can be blamed. Yorishi Shuin grinned and spoke as if it didn't matter. Makoto Senju gestured slightly behind him and asked, Yorishi, aren't you going to say goodbye to Kisuke Uehara in person? Yorishi Shuin shook her head and refused. No, there is no point in a hypocritical farewell. Choosing different paths and heading towards different results is only a matter of time. After I chose the master at the beginning, I had a premonition of this moment. I still have this awareness. At the end, Yorishi Shuin's tone seemed extremely serious. Makoto Senju didn't say anything else, he just showed an understanding and considerate smile to Shifu Yuan Yorishi, and then hurried away. Now, nearly half of the affairs of the squad are on Makoto Senju's shoulders. The work is heavy, and even Uehara Kisuke's soul burial ceremony is just a way for Makoto Senju to relax. Therefore, after the relaxation is over, it is natural to return to the first squad as soon as possible to deal with many things. In particular, the ceremony for Unohana-retsu to officially take office as the Captain General and Captain of the first squad is approaching. This major event has taken up a lot of Makoto Senju's energy. Where does Makoto Senju get so much energy to be sent for Uehara Kisuke? Only when Unohana-retsu really takes office as the Captain General and Makoto Senju officially serves as the new Captain General's adjutant, Makoto Senju will have the opportunity to escape from this seemingly endless file hell. However, when Makoto Senju returned to the first squad's barracks and looked at the ceremony venue that was being built, a smile could not help but appear on his haggard and tired face, and he said silently, "It's finally this moment, Unohana teacher." Chapter 712. Taking office as captain. 3 days later. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni is back. Compared to his past attitude of absolute majesty, in just a few days, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's temperament has changed greatly. In addition to the captain's Aori of the first squadron, his smiling and peaceful expression makes him look like a retired and leisurely old man, with one hand holding a cane transformed from his zanpakutō and the other hand behind his back. Among the group of Shinigami led by Unohana-retsu to welcome Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's return, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, who had initially completed their treatment, hurried to greet him. "Teacher." "Yes." Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni nodded, and when his eyes swept over Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, he couldn't help feeling a little sad. At present, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro were no longer suitable for the position of captain. Jikitijashiro looked even more sickly, but after all, Jikitijashiro had been like this for hundreds of years, and Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni could barely accept it. The one who changed the most was Kakushansui, who used to look like a dissolute middle-aged man. He seemed to have aged hundreds of years in an instant, and his spiritual pressure was only close to that of an ordinary soldier. From Kakushansui's seemingly dim eyes, Kakushansui still couldn't accept the fact that his locked knot and soul sleep were pierced, and fell into a period of confusion. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni patted Kakushansui on the shoulder and said in a kind tone, "Hirasui, how about going to the Shine Spiritual Academy with me? Educating and training success well is also a kind of protection for the Seireitei." Kakushansui responded in a low voice, "Yes." Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni stopped talking and turned to Unohana-retsu and the other high-ranking members of the 13th Gotti squad. "Thank you all for coming to welcome me." The Shinigami, including Unohana-retsu, saluted Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni respectfully. "Captain General." Even though everyone knew that Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was about to resign as the Captain General, his character, style, and contribution were undoubtedly worthy of respect from the entire 13th Gotti squad. Not to mention, the entire 13th Gotti squad was founded by Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni showed a gentle smile that he had never had before. At this moment, he looked at the Shinigami in front of him, but he felt like he was visiting a child. During the past few days, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni stayed alone outside the Seireitei, paying attention to the changes in the Seireitei while practicing self-cultivation, and his state of mind became more and more open. Without him, the Gotti 13 did not fall into chaos and collapse. Instead, it quickly regained stability under the leadership of Unohana-retsu. This made Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni suddenly realize that he should have given up the position of Captain General long ago, and that his existence might have become an obstacle to the new changes of the Gotti. 13 inches a certain sense. 1,000 years? It's such a long and short time. At this moment, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni led the Shinigami all the way back to the First Division, walking very slowly. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's eyes kept looking at the surrounding plants and trees, bricks and tiles, as if he was recalling something, or as if he wanted to engrave all of this in his heart. After returning to the First Division, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's actions showed his once vigorous and resolute style, and he had no intention of clinging to power. At the captain's meeting, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni first admitted the various mistakes he made in the war with Aizen Sasuke, announced his resignation as captain in public, and recommended Unohana-retsu as the next captain. The result of the statement at the captain's meeting was an unusually smooth unanimous approval. Then, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni personally held a ceremony for Unohana-retsu to take office as captain, and handed over the captain's Aori that represented his identity to Unohana-retsu. In addition to the entire Gotti 13th Division chief and above Shinigami who witnessed this scene, Kuroseki Ichigo, Ishirai, Kuroseki Ishin, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, Ichimura Jin, Zaraki Shiroi and others also became witnesses. However, among the witnesses, only Shifen Yuan Yorishi and Zaraki Shiroi understood how far-reaching the impact of this moment would be, and it would also lead the GOTY 13th Division to a brand new future. The GOTY 13th Division has entered a new era. After the ceremony of taking office as the Captain General, Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni had a 3-hour secret talk with Unohana Retsu, telling him a lot of secrets that only the Captain General could know. Afterwards, Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni left the Seireitei that he had guarded for 1,000 years like a retired old man, and then joined the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts as the Dean. This was also the last care that Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni gave to the GOTY 13. In addition to joining the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts to cultivate new Shinigami with his lost energy, he also expressed his support for Unohana Retsu and the GOTY 13 inches this way. After all, the relationship between the GOTY 13 and the Zero Squad is not a pure superior-subordinate relationship, but an extremely complex relationship. Once Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni is gone, it is possible that the Zero Squad may directly interfere with the internal affairs of the GOTY 13. After Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni, Suzuki Chojiro, Kakushansui, Yukita Jashiro, and Komamura Sejin also resigned from their positions in the GOTY 13, and Yamamoto Jinraisai Shichikuni joined the Shinigami Spiritual Academy as a teacher. For a time, for the lower-level soldiers of the GOTY 13, it seemed that the GOTY 13 had undergone earth-shaking changes in just a few days. Afterwards, the new Captain General Unohana Retsu issued a large number of appointment letters one after another. Ichimura Jin, who has been successfully whitewashed, has resumed his position as captain of the 3rd Division. The former 3rd seat of the 4th Division, Toro Tetsuyama, and the 4th seat, Ioki Riza, have been promoted to captain and vice-captain of the 4th Division respectively. Road Guru Meikensei and Kunin Haku of the Masked Corps have respectively served as captain and vice-captain of the 7th Division. Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who was nearly killed in the war, replaced Kakushansui as captain of the Intelligence Division's 8th Division. At the same time, Zaraki Su was also pardoned of his crimes, and replaced Yukita Jashiro as captain of the 13th Division, and the vice-captain was Kachika Rukia. In addition, the Captain General Unohana Retsu was quite merciful to withdraw the punishment of the Central 46th Room against Tetsuya Murin and Bukijin Rishoda, allowing Tetsuya Murin and Bukijin Rishoda to lead the gradually marginalized Kidenshu again. P.S. In order to facilitate the reading of all the book friends, the specific list of captains or vice-captains is posted in the work-related. Chapter 713. The present Special Operations Team. As a result, the captain positions of the entire GOTY 13th Division, except for the captain of the 5th Division, have all been filled with corresponding candidates. Most of the members of the entire Masked Corps have also successfully restored their status and identities from 100 years ago. However, this also made the remaining members of the Masked Corps who have not yet been assigned a position a little impatient. In the courtyard specially designated by the Seireitei to temporarily accommodate Ichigo Kurosaki's family, Ryashida, and the Masked Corps, Hiri Sarajuki jumped up and down a little irritably, muttering non-stop. Why? Where is my appointment letter? Even Kensei and Kanami Shura, that muscle idiot and idiot girl, have restored their positions as captain and vice-captain, but where is mine? It doesn't make sense. I'm obviously so much better than Kanami Shura, damn it, damn it. Hearing the noisy voice of Hiri Sarajuki, Makoto Hirako, who was listening to music leisurely, couldn't help but speak. Hiri, can you be quiet for a while? Upon hearing this, Sarajuki Hiri immediately turned her firepower to Hirako Mako and said, "Of course you are not anxious. You're originally the captain of the 5th Division, and the vacant position of the 5th Division captain will definitely be your successor. Unlike me, my original captain was Kisuke, but now Kisuke is gone, and the current captain of the 12th Division is Kurosachi Mayuri. I don't get along with that guy." Hirako Mako said unhappily upon hearing this. "Didn't you originally not want to go back to Seireitei? Why do you care so much whether the GOTY 13th Division invites you back? That's different." Sarajuki Hiri said angrily. "Even that idiot girl Kanami Hate was invited. If I wasn't invited, I would definitely be laughed at by that idiot girl for the rest of my life. I want to be invited first, and then proudly refuse. Do you understand?" "I don't quite understand." Hirako Mako rolled her eyes at Sarajuki Hiri and said, "Speaking of which, compared to your boring worries, shouldn't Fujiro and Lisa be the ones who were most distressed? Their original positions in the GOTY 13 have already been filled." Suddenly, Sarajuki Hiri looked at Fenj Kaoru and Yagomura Lisa, who looked a little gloomy, and felt a little embarrassed to say anything. Now, in the entire Masked Corps, only Hirako Mako, Fenj Kaljura, Yido Merilisa and Saruki Hiri have no specific arrangements. Unlike Hirako Mako who is confident and Saruki Hiri who is playing badly, Fenj Kaljura and Yido Merilisa are both determined to return to the GOTY 13. Yido Merilisa smiled bitterly and said, "It's okay, at most, I will go to the Shinem Spiritual Academy to teach ghost hearts, which will be easier." At this moment, a gentle voice came from outside the house. With Senior Yidomura's agent ability, it's too early for him to go to the Shinem Spiritual Academy now. Then, Senju Cheng, who had changed into the uniform of the captain's adjutant, walked in and greeted everyone warmly. "Good afternoon, seniors." Immediately, the 4 people in the room stood up and saluted Senju Cheng. Regardless of the fact that Senju Cheng's current status and position are completely different from the past, he represents the will of the new Captain General Unohana Retsu, and his own combat power is also the best in the Soul Society. More importantly, Senju Cheng had done a favor to the Masked Corps 100 years ago. Therefore, even Saruki Hiri, who has the worst personality, treats Senju Cheng with the most basic respect. "You're welcome, seniors." Senju Cheng quickly returned the greeting, then sat down with everyone casually like a friend, and spoke. "Recently, Unohana-sensei has been carrying out a series of big moves, and I have been so busy that I barely have time to breathe, so I have been a little bit neglectful to all of you seniors. Please forgive me. You are too polite, Cheng. Unohana has just taken over as the Captain General, and there must be many things that need to be dealt with urgently." Hirako Cheng replied. Then, after the two sides exchanged a few simple pleasantries, Senju Cheng's tone changed, and he got straight to the point. "In fact, Unohana-sensei and the GOTY 13 will naturally not forget the grievances and contributions of all of you seniors, so after careful consideration, we will also use you all." Saruki Hiri's eyes lit up, and he asked subconsciously, "Oh. Hurry up. Hiri, don't be rude in front of Cheng-sensei." Hirako Cheng couldn't help but scold in a low voice, reminding Saruki Hiri. "It's okay, it's okay. I've always liked Senior Saruki Hiri's straightforward and honest character." Senju Cheng dissuaded Hirako in a casual manner, and turned to speak to Yido Merilisa, who actually admired her more in his heart. "Senior Yidomura, the 9th Division is still lacking a vice captain to assist Captain Hisaji. I wonder if Senior Yidomura is willing to work with Captain Hisaji to assist each other." Everyone present heard this, and their eyes fell on Yido Merilisa. Yido Merilisa thought about it for a while, and then breathed a sigh of relief in her heart, and nodded in agreement. After all, for Yido Merilisa, life in the world may not be bad, but it is obviously not as good as returning to the Seireitei. It is said that Captain Hisaji is a calm and cautious person. As the other party's adjutant, it is obviously much better than the annoying temperament of Kakushansui. "What about me and Fenj Kaljura?" Hisari Saruki asked with concern, eyes wide open. However, Cheng Senju still did not respond to Hisari Saruki directly, but spoke to Hirako Cheng who had been confident all along. Senior Hirako, Aiden Sasuke was only temporarily repelled, but this does not mean that the threat of Aiden Sasuke has completely disappeared. On the contrary, Aiden Sasuke, who is gradually hiding in the dark, will undoubtedly be more dangerous, and after accumulating enough power, he is likely to attack Karakura town again, and it is not certain that he intends to create the Cheng-ge. Upon hearing this, Hirako frowned unconsciously, and asked with a hunch in his heart. "Senju, what do you mean?" Senju spoke with a pure and serious face. "That's right. After Captain Unohana discussed with the other captains, they all agreed that it was necessary to retain enough manpower in Karakura town, and not rely entirely on the Shinigami agents. And, as the frequency of large hollows appearing among the hollows that attack reality continues to increase, the captains meeting unanimously passed a proposal to add a special action team in the real world." In an instant, Hirako Cheng had completely reacted, his mouth twitched slightly, and he pointed his finger at himself. "That's right." Senju Cheng nodded solemnly and said, "I think among the many captains, only Senior Hirako, who was once the superior of Aiden Sasuke, can take on such an important task. Therefore, the decision made at the captain's meeting is that Captain Hirako will be the captain of the special action team in the real world, and Senior Fenj will be the vice captain. At present, only Senior Saruki will be the team member." Chapter 714. drawing cakes to satisfy hunger. In an instant, Hirako Mako's expression was completely frozen, and Saruki Hiri, who had reacted, burst into laughter, and even slapped the table repeatedly, saying, "Ha ha ha, Hirako bald, I didn't expect that you, a bald man, can't be the captain." Hirako Makoto rubbed his temples with a headache, and said helplessly to Saruki Hiri, "Shut up," and then asked, "Makoto, that means, I will be stationed in Karakura town in the future." "That's right," Senju Makoto replied. Suddenly, Hirako Makoto's expression became a little ugly. Hirako Makoto is not a stupid person. On the contrary, Hirako Makoto is a very sharp existence among all the captains. At the same time, Hirako Makoto is also that first captain to realize the hidden danger of Aizen Sosok. From the perspective of the Masked Corps, this arrangement now is not right no matter how you look at it. After splitting away more than half of the combat power of the Masked Corps, the remaining part was thrown into the real world with a name. Makoto Senju, who had always noticed the changes in Hirako Makoto's expression, pointed to the door and said, "Senior Hirako, is it possible to talk to Makoto Senju in private?" Makoto Hirako's eyes flickered slightly, and out of his trust in Makoto Senju, he nodded, and then followed Makoto Senju to a relatively quiet place outside the door. "Makoto Senju, is there anything you need to say that needs to be avoided from my other companions?" Makoto Hirako asked in a relaxed tone. With Senior Hirako's keenness, there are actually many things that Senior Hirako cannot hide from you, but there are also many things that Senior Hirako should not have noticed. Makoto Senju still maintained that gentle tone, but there was a hint of helplessness in it. "Oh?" Makoto Hirako cast a puzzled look at Makoto Senju. Makoto Senju organized his tone slightly and spoke. "Among them, the purpose of establishing the present world special operations team that I just mentioned is not false. As long as the threat of Aizen Sosok is not eliminated, we cannot relax our vigilance against Karakura town. Therefore, Senior Hirako and Senior Hobashi, who also have illusion-type zanpakutō, are the most suitable candidates to go to Karakura town among the current GOTY 13. Of course, more importantly," Senju Makoto paused when he said this, then raised his hand to lay down several ghost barriers, and then continued. "With Senior Hirako's qualifications, he must be very clear about the complicated relationship between the Zero Squad and the GOTY 13. Upon hearing this, Hirako Makoto frowned, his expression completely straightened, and he nodded slowly. The GOTY 13 and the Zero Squad are by no means a simple superior subordinate relationship. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was the one who established the GOTY 13. The predecessor of the Zero Squad was the existence that controlled the Seireitei and even the entire Soul Society before the GOTY 13. As for the specific agreement or conflict between the GOTY 13 and the Zero Division, and the process that eventually led to the current situation, Hirako Makoto was not clear. But with Hirako Makoto's cautious and suspicious character, it was obvious that he did not completely trust the Zero Division. Senju Makoto, who saw Hirako Makoto's reaction, slowly continued to say the next sentence. Then, Senior Hirako, have you ever thought about why the GOTY 13's training Shinigami system has become more and more perfect, but the number of captain-level Shinigami that have emerged over the past 1,000 years has become less and less? The smarter a person is, the easier it is to make careful inferences based on his own thinking. An amazing answer almost subconsciously emerged in Hirako Makoto's mind. "Captain Hirako." It was not until Senju Makoto's voice with some doubt sounded that Hirako Makoto came back to his senses in a trance and found that a layer of cold sweat had actually appeared on his body. "So, Makoto-kun, what do you mean?" Hirako Makoto still asked with some disbelief. "I don't know, I'm not sure, and I don't understand." Senju Makoto shook his head and denied 3 times in a row, but deliberately flashed a gloomy and heavy look in his eyes in front of Hirako Makoto. This made Hirako Makoto's heart jump, and she realized that such speculation was completely contrary to the current political correctness of the GOTY 13, so Senju Makoto didn't dare to speak out easily. Then, Senju Makoto said, "Of course, what I mean is that protecting the Seireitei is the mission and responsibility of the 13th GOTY Squad. We cannot place our hopes on the Zero Squad when we encounter a strong enemy. Therefore, Unohana-sensei's original intention was to use this as an opportunity to form a special operations team composed entirely of captain-level combat forces to deal with various dangers and difficulties that far exceed what ordinary squads can handle. And Senior Hirako's strategy, character, and ability are all the best in the entire Seireitei. In addition, Senior Hirako has experience in forming a masked corps, so both Unohana-sensei and I have decided to place our hopes on Senior Hirako. For a while, even with Hirako Mako's temperament, under this series of brainwashing, shock, and trust, honor, and recognition, Mako Hirako suddenly developed a sense of mission and honor, and formed such a squad with all captain-level members. After careful imagination, being the captain in it is definitely much cooler than being the captain of an ordinary squad. I understand. Hirako Makoto nodded heavily, as if he had made some realization. The present World Special Operations Team is in your hands, Senior Hirako. Senju Makoto said sincerely. After a while, as Senju Makoto cancelled the ghost barrier, he watched Hirako Makoto return to the house with an excited look, as if he had been injected with chicken blood, with a faint smile on his face. No one would be willing to eat a simple painted cake, however, when this cake is given various meanings, so that this cake can satisfy Hirako Makoto's spiritual desire and satisfaction. Hirako Makoto obviously ate it. As the most troublesome person in the masked army, as long as Hirako Makoto is convinced, Fenge Kaolujira and Sarakaka Hisari will not have any objections. Then, Senju Makoto waved goodbye to the other death gods in the house with a pure and sincere face, and then left in the direction of the wide gate of the Seireitei. This time, the main purpose of Senju Makoto's leaving the 1st Division was to welcome back the expeditionary force led by Yamaguchi Shusuke on behalf of Captain General Unohana. Hirako Mako's arrangement was just a side job. Chapter 715 New Captain of the 5th Division, White Gate. On this day, this gate, which is an important entrance to the Seireitei, was opened. When Makoto Senju arrived at the White Gate, all the ceremonies to welcome the return of the Expeditionary Corps were ready. The appearance of Makoto Senju also caused a commotion, and then a neat voice rang out. Master Senju. In the current Seireitei, although Makoto Senju's actual position is only the deputy commander of the first team, because of the godlike combat power that Makoto Senju once showed, it made all the Shinigami understand that Makoto Senju is not something that an ordinary vice-captain can measure. Therefore, the grassroots soldiers in the entire Gotti 13th Division did not call Makoto Senju Vice-Captain Senju like other vice-captains, but respectfully called him Master Senju. In the face of the salutes of the Shinigami, Makoto Senju responded to them gently as always, making many Shinigami look at Makoto Senju with more respect. Then, as the person in charge of leading the 5th Division to welcome Yamaguchi Shusuke, Hinamura hurried to Senju Makoto, bowed with some excitement and restraint, and then said loudly, Master Senju, everything is ready, please give me your advice. Senju Makoto put his hands on Hinamura's thin shoulders, helped her up personally, and said gently and warmly, Don't be nervous, Mamo, I have heard about your ability during this period. It turns out that the student who was a little embarrassed in the Mao Spiritual Academy in my memory has unknowingly become an outstanding dead god who can stand on his own. As soon as these words came out, Hinamura's face was almost completely red with excitement, and the indescribable great joy completely wrapped her heart, and she grinned unconsciously to show her white teeth. Being recognized. Especially, Master Senju actually called her by her nickname, Mamo. Such closeness, this made Mama Hinamura feel excited that a perfect idol was close to me. As for the name Mamo, Mama Hinamura didn't care about the fact that only her stinky brother Hitsuge Yachiro used it in the past. Instead, she felt that Senju Makoto in front of her seemed to be emitting a warm light. This made Mama Hinamura, who was originally somewhat gloomy and resistant to receiving the order to welcome the new captain of the 5th Division, feel completely happy instantly. After all, in Mama Hinamura's heart, she always felt a little bit difficult to let go of Aizen Sasuke. Even though she knew that such a reality would never happen, she still hoped that there might be a day when Aizen Sasuke would return to the 5th Division. Yes, Master Senju, I will definitely work hard and live up to your expectations. Mama Hinamura responded excitedly. Well, Senju Makoto nodded and said, Next, I'll ask Mamo to assist the new captain of the 5th Division. Of course, if you encounter any difficulties, or if you find something you don't understand about the new captain, you can always ask me for advice. Yes. Hinamura responded excitedly, not realizing that Senju Makoto was trying to give the new 5th Division a heads up in advance. At this moment, at the end of the site outside the White Gate, a group of figures wearing the unique cloaks of the Expedition Corps appeared. The suppressed spiritual pressure, fierce aura, and the invisible sense of killing fully demonstrated that the group of people were not simple characters, as if they were a group of warriors who had just returned from a battlefield of killing. Soon, the group arrived in front of the wide gate, and then stopped 10 steps away from Senju Cheng, Hinamuraimamu and others. Hinamuraimamu glanced at Senju Cheng's frowning brows beside him, and then took the initiative to confirm. The Expeditionary Corps? Yes. Following a voice, the Shinigami pulled off their hoods and revealed their faces. The officer next to Hinamuraimamu quickly compared and flicked through the information in his hand. With the recent attacks on the Seireitei, the vigilance of the 13th Division of the Gotti is naturally different from the past. Therefore, even the returning Expeditionary Corps needs to confirm their identities one by one before they're allowed to enter the Seireitei. In the end, except for the one person standing at the front of the Expeditionary Corps who did not take off his hood, the identities of the other members of the Expeditionary Corps have been checked. However, there was only one person's information left in the officer's hand, so he asked directly. "Excuse me, is it Master Amaguchi-suk?" "It's me." A mature and worn voice sounded. As the hood was pulled off, what appeared in the eyes of the officer and many Shinigami was a messy hair and untidy beard, looking like an ordinary middle-aged man who didn't care about his appearance. Then, the officer compared the photo in the file in his hand and made a rough identification. Except for the fact that he looked more unkempt, his main appearance was exactly the same as that of Amaguchi-suk. Hinamuraimamu tried to keep a straight face and act serious, and stepped forward to speak. "Welcome back, Lord Amaguchi-suk and all the colleagues of the Expeditionary Corps." Amaguchi-suk scratched his messy hair and said with a smile. "You're Vice Captain Hinamuraimamu, right? You're even cuter than expected." These words with a little disrespect made Hinamuraimamu's expression look a little unpleasant. She stretched out her hand and said in a serious tone. "Master Amaguchi-suk, you will be taking over the position of Captain of the 5th Division, and I will be your adjutant, Mamo Hinamurai. Please give me your guidance in the future." "Okay, I understand. Vice Captain Mamo Hinamurai, you don't have to be so serious." "My style is not that serious." Amaguchi-suk responded with some disapproval, waved at Mamo Hinamurai, and then walked straight towards Senju Cheng and took the initiative to extend his hand. "You are Makoto-kun, right? I have heard of your name for a long time, and finally meet you." "Yes." Senju Cheng shook the hand that Amaguchi-suk extended and said, "I didn't expect that you were Amaguchi-suk. What a surprise." Amaguchi-suk shook Senju Cheng's hand vigorously and replied, "Mr. Makoto is now the Vice Captain of the 1st Division. Even if you are to be the Captain of the 5th Division, I will need your guidance in the future." "No, I will be relieved if the 5th Division is handed over to you." Senju Cheng replied, and then the two of them laughed almost at the same time, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. However, if someone could observe Senju Cheng's pupils very closely, they would find that the image reflected in them was not that of a middle-aged man who looked unkempt, but Aizen Sosuk. Chapter 716 The So-Called Truth. Aizen Sosuk. Holding Senju Cheng's hand, Aizen Sosuk said with a faint smile on his face. "No, I have been fighting in Hutomundo for a long time, and I don't know much about the affairs of the 5th Division, so if Makoto is free, please come to the 5th Division often to give me advice." Senju Makoto couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. With Aizen Sosuk's ability, he probably knows exactly how many grasses there are in the 5th Division, and there is no one more suitable to be the captain of the 5th Division than Aizen Sosuk. Why does he need his own advice? The whole sentence probably only wants to express a few words, "come and play often." Of course. Senju Makoto smiled and responded. As the series of ceremonies prepared to welcome the return of these expeditionary corps ended, Senju Makoto, who originally intended to come here to welcome Tenbei-shusuk and to test Tenbei-shusuk by the way, naturally did not intend to deliberately test Aizen Sosuk. So, when Makoto Senju was going to leave Hinamuraimamu and the 5th Division to Aizen Sosuk for training, and then prepare to return to the 1st Division, Aizen Sosuk blocked Makoto Senju's way and asked, "Makoto-kun, won't you take me to visit the 5th Division's barracks? If I can get your support, my next task as the captain of the 5th Division will be much easier." Makoto Senju heard this and felt a little helpless, but he had to agree. What about visiting and supporting are naturally just excuses for Aizen Sosuk. But if Makoto Senju continues to choose to leave at this moment, it may let the outside world convey the news that he is not in harmony with the new captain of the 5th Division. However, at this moment, the rest of the 5th Division and the members of the Expeditionary Corps who followed Amaguchi-suk back saw that Amaguchi-suk and Makoto Senju looked like they were talking happily. Then, Makoto Senju and Aizen Sosuk walked at the front of the team and headed towards the 5th Division's barracks. After pulling away from the Shinigami such as Yunan Raimamo behind him, Makoto Senju secretly set up a ghost barrier to block the sound, and then asked, Aizen-kun, your appearance really surprised me and caught me off guard. Is it just a surprise, not a surprise? Aizen Sasuke asked back. Then it can be considered a little surprise, but it is undoubtedly more of a shock. After a pause, Makoto Senju asked, Aizen-kun, aren't you worried that your identity will be exposed when you return to the Seireitei? Even if your ability of Mirror Flower and Water Moon originally covered most of the Shinigami, the Zero Division and some new Shinigami have not witnessed the process of your zanpakutō being released. Aizen Sasuke raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, Makoto-kun, are you asking this knowingly? Makoto Senju did not comment, just looked at Aizen Sasuke. Aizen Sasuke smiled and said with a little helplessness, If it's you, Makoto, I don't mind telling you. Under the effect of the Hogyoku, my zanpakutō is no longer divided into those meaningless Shikai and Bankai. Just like the Hollow's return to the blade, the power of the zanpakutō is completely integrated with itself, and what is obtained is a more powerful complete hypnosis, or the new name I gave it, absolute illusion. Therefore, the Kyokusui-jetsu, which was previously restricted by the condition that it must witness the release of the zanpakutō, has also changed to the moment it sees me, it will fall into the power of Kyokusui-jetsu. I am the Kyokusui-jetsu that no one can touch. Aizen Sasuke said this, as if he was stating a fact. Therefore, the problem that Makoto is worried about does not exist. As soon as they see me, they will fall into the illusion of Kyokusui-jetsu. This is the case for the Zero Division, and the same is true for those new members. So, even if I walk in the Seireitei with my true appearance, who can touch me? Who can look directly at me? Senju Makoto asked after hearing this. So, I'm the only exception. That's right. No matter how illusory it has meaning only in relation to reality. Therefore, I put the truth of the Mirror Flower and Moon in the spirit of Makoto-kun hidden in the Mirror Flower and Moon. Aizen Sasuke answered. Senju Makoto looked at Aizen Sasuke deeply and finally said, as expected of Aizen-kun. Even though Senju Makoto had already inferred Aizen Sasuke's specific abilities, after confirming it from Aizen Sasuke's mouth, he couldn't help but sigh. The Mirror Flower and Moon must have a part of truth. However, Aizen Sasuke's truth is the spirit in the zanpakutō, the Mirror Flower and Moon, which is integrated with the Hogyoku and has the indestructible characteristic. Without destroying the Mirror Flower and Moon, it is impossible to touch Aizen Sasuke's truth. However, at this moment, the Mirror Flower and Moon already has the indestructible characteristic and cannot be destroyed at all. In this way, this undoubtedly becomes a paradox, and makes Aizen Sasuke completely invincible in a sense. Moreover, due to the connection between Senju Makoto and that spirit particle, Senju Makoto can indeed ignore the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons. But even Senju Makoto himself cannot make others ignore Aizen Sasuke's illusions by touching them. Therefore, Senju Makoto is the only one in the world who can see the truth of mirror flowers and water moons. Aizen Sasuke smiled slightly and said to Senju Makoto's praise. Makoto-kun, why should you be modest? Only you can become my real instrument, and I have no choice. It must be said that the feeling of listening to the praise of others and listening to Aizen Sasuke's praise that seems to come from the heart is completely different. Suddenly, Senju Makoto also seemed to understand a little bit why Aizen Sasuke would regard most of the existence as ants. When the gap and realm are large enough, all the recognition, praise and insults from the other party will hardly cause any waves in his heart. Suddenly, Makoto Senju remembered his original purpose and asked. So, the real Amakashosuke? Makoto-kun wants it? Aizen Sasuke replied. In that case, I will send his body to you another day. Makoto Senju's expression froze for a moment, and this result could only be said to be within his expectations. But, the captain-level Shinigami, no matter what, can't be regarded as the cabbage that can be found everywhere. Aizen Sasuke's tone, as if he just cut a bunch of leeks when passing by, made Makoto Senju feel a little distressed. The miscellaneous vegetables below the captain level can be trampled to death. But the Shinigami above the captain level, no matter how useless they are, can still have a value for reuse. But at this point, Makoto Senju could only wave his hand and said, no need, you can keep the body for fun. Chapter 717. Sudden danger. Soon, during the conversation between Aizen Sasuke and Senju Makoto, they arrived at the 5th Division's barracks without realizing it. Compared to the 5th Division during Aizen Sasuke's tenure, the 5th Division in front of them was undoubtedly quite chaotic. After all, Hinamuraimamo might be quite capable in handling documents, and could also faithfully and conscientiously carry out the tasks of her superiors. However, Hinamuraimamo's somewhat weak and emotional personality, coupled with her not-so-outstanding strength among the vice-captains, made it difficult for her to completely suppress the officers and soldiers below. Chaos was born from this. "Excuse me," Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke said at the same time. In an instant, Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke looked at each other and laughed at each other, and each understood what the other meant. With the appearance of Senju Makoto, the entire 5th Division, which originally looked quite chaotic, almost instantly quieted down, and then hurriedly restored order. After all, at this moment, Senju Makoto's prestige in the entire Seireitei can be said to have surpassed Unohana Retsu, and was even comparable to Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni in his prime. The giant wooden Buddha that seemed to be able to suppress Seireitei with one palm was enough to become a lofty figure that would never end in the hearts of all the Shinigami who witnessed this scene. Then, Senju Makoto looked at the Shinigami of the 5th Division who had gathered quickly and naturally, and gestured to Aizen Sasuke and said, "Let me introduce you to everyone. This is the new captain of the 5th Division, Amagai Shusuke. Good afternoon, everyone." In the eyes of everyone, Amagai Shusuke showed a simple and gentle smile that seemed to be a little overwhelmed, and gestured to the many Shinigami. "I'm Amagai Shusuke. I'm new here. Please give me your guidance." For the sake of Senju Makoto, almost all the Shinigami responded enthusiastically and respectfully. However, in fact, even Senju Makoto, who was watching from the sidelines, could see it clearly. The enthusiasm and respect of the members of the 5th Division were entirely for the sake of Senju Makoto. In fact, they looked at Amagai Shusuke with indifference and disregard. "Captain." This is an indelible pain in the hearts of the Shinigami of the 5th Division. Due to the rebellion of Aizen Sasuke and the devastating damage to the Seireitei, the 3rd Division, the 5th Division and the 9th Division suddenly became the most despised divisions of the GOTY 13 divisions. Especially the 5th Division, which is the lowest among the lowest. Even the dirty work of cleaning the sewers of the Seireitei, the 5th Division now has to cover it all. And with the successful cleansing of the captain of the 3rd Division, Jin Ichimura, the new captain of the 9th Division, Hisaji took office and made an indelible contribution to saving the Soul Society. This also made the 5th Division the only low-ranking horse in the GOTY 13 divisions, and their daily lives became more and more difficult. After briefly introducing himself, Aizen Sasuke did not rectify the 5th Division with thunderous means as Makoto Senju expected. Instead, he did not care about the matter and directly let the team members go about their business. Then, Aizen Sasuke took Makoto Senju to visit the 5th Division's barracks. "Aizen-kun, didn't you take the opportunity to rectify it just now?" Makoto Senju asked. "That kind of thing is not urgent." Aizen Sasuke smiled lightly, obviously not taking the chaos and contradictions within the 5th Division seriously. Perhaps, the only thing that Aizen Sasuke cared about was that the 5th Division was so unbearable that he would lose some face in front of Makoto Senju. However, since Makoto Senju had already seen it, he was not in a hurry to deal with it for the time being. It was obviously more interesting to travel with Makoto Senju. Then, Aizen Sasuke pointed to the open space in the corner of the captain's courtyard and asked, "Mr. Makoto, what do you think of planting a cherry tree there, with a pond and a pavilion next to it?" "Well, it should be pretty good." Senju Makoto nodded and replied. After all, Senju Makoto likes cherry trees very much, and many people in the past GOTY 13 knew about it. And then, Aizen Sasuke seemed to have a strong interest in the decoration of the courtyard. While pulling Senju Makoto to visit all the way, he kept announcing Senju Makoto's opinions back and forth. At first, Senju Makoto answered quite seriously, but gradually he tasted a different meaning. "How is this? It seems like Aizen Sasuke wants to change the courtyard into the shape he likes." Ahem, Senju Makoto coughed a few times, just when he was thinking of finding an excuse to slip away. A hell butterfly slowly floated on Senju Makoto's hand, and a message was transmitted. Then, Senju Makoto spoke to Aizen Sasuke. "Aizen-kun, captain's meeting." "So anxious." Aizen Sasuke was a little surprised. Although every time a new captain appears, a captain's meeting will be held to introduce the new captain to show respect for the new captain and facilitate the new captain to quickly get familiar with the other captains. However, Aizen Sasuke has just arrived at the 5th Division's barracks this time, and has not had time to have a good exchange with Senju Makoto, but a captain's meeting is actually being held. It's not just for Aizen-kun. In the past few days, Unohana-sensei has appointed a large number of captains and vice-captains. In order to avoid trouble, we have waited until the new captain of the 5th Division returns to Seireitei before holding a captain's meeting. Senju Cheng explained. Aiden Sosok spoke with some helplessness. Well, there is a long way to go. Next time I will tidy up the interior of the 5th Division and repair the courtyard. Makoto, come to my place again. No problem. Makoto Senju responded cheerfully, and then he and Aiden Sosok found him and Raimamo, and then rushed to the 1st Division together. As the captains arrived at the 1st Division one after another, the long-awaited captain meeting of all the captains began. Makoto Senju also went to the adjutant waiting room where he was now in charge. However, when Makoto Senju just walked into the room where all the adjutants of the current GOTY 13th Division were gathered, he suddenly felt a hidden danger, and his eyes subconsciously shot towards the source. What surprised Makoto Senju was that the source of the danger actually came from his nanao. No, to be more precise, the danger came from a very strange-shaped sword hung on his nanao's waist. Moreover, his nanao seemed to have sensed something, and held the knife at her waist tightly with both hands, and her eyes, which met with those of Senju Makoto, revealed deep horror. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 718. Restrained sense of danger. At this moment, the invisible atmosphere between Senju Makoto and his nanao has already attracted the attention of some vice-captains. Senju Makoto frowned, staring at the strange-shaped knife on his nanao's waist, with a little solemnity and vigilance flashing across his eyes. This instinctive sense of danger was not felt in Hyoshogu Ichibane before, and it is also not felt in Aizen Sosok now. It is a sense of danger similar to restraint. And his nanao, who came back to his senses, has already realized something. The hands holding the strange-shaped knife flashed a ghost light, which calmed down the abnormal reaction of the strange-shaped knife. However, Senju Makoto understood that it was only his nanao who temporarily suppressed the knife, and the threat posed by the knife itself to Senju Makoto was not reduced. Senju Makoto took a deep look at his nanao, who lowered his head, and did not directly say what his nanao said, but sat in the position where Suzachojiro used to sit, looking at the vice-captains gathered below. In addition to some familiar veteran vice-captains, there are also vice-captains who took office after Unohana Retsu succeeded as the captain general. Ioki Riza, Konami Shiro, Yido Merilisa, Kachiki Rukia, and the vice-captain Akiko, who was selected by Kurasuchi Mayuri. Although Senju Makoto has a kind and gentle face, under the influence of Senju Makoto's current strong prestige, many vice-captains present also instantly quieted down. Especially the vice-captains who have always had a personal relationship with Senju Makoto, looking at Senju Makoto with a sense of awe unconsciously. However, that seriousness only lasted for less than a few breaths, and a pink figure rushed directly into Senju Makoto's arms. Brother Makoto. For such a pink-haired lily, Senju Makoto's voice was unconsciously gentle, and he said, "Yarai, what's wrong? You're so bored, Makoto-kun, come play with me." You haven't played with Yarai properly since you came back to life. Kusaka Yarai expressed his closeness to Senju Makoto without any concealment, as if he would stay in the adjutant waiting room obediently this time just to play with Senju Makoto. However, this request made Senju Makoto quite a headache. Where is this place? This is the area of the 1st Squadron's barracks. If I dare to play with Kusaka Yarai here today, I'm afraid that Mr. Unohana will have to drag him to the courtyard of the 1st Squadron to play something more fun next time. What's more, all the vice-captains have gathered in the adjutant waiting room now, in public and under the watchful eyes of everyone. That is undoubtedly, damn. No, now is the serious captain meeting period. As adjutants, we also have to wait in the waiting room properly. Senju Makoto gently persuaded. The two sides of Kusaka Yairu's mouth were obviously turned down, and he looked depressed, but he forced himself to be obedient, and silently climbed down from Senju Makoto's body. Senju Makoto saw this, and his heart softened. Instead, he gently supported Kusaka Yairu with one hand and said, "But it's not impossible for Yairu to stay here." "Yes, Makoto." Suddenly, Kusaka Yairu's expression obviously turned cloudy, and the whole person was a little happy. This scene, in the eyes of most vice-captains, did not think there was anything wrong. After all, Kusaka Yaru's willfulness and noise were undoubtedly well known in the entire Seireitei. Even if it was King Puchi's Kusaka Yaru might not disobey. On the contrary, this reflected Senju Makoto's usual gentle style, and he could tolerate the behavior that Chojuro Suzuki would definitely scold in the past. Only, as the vice-captain of the 13th Division, Rukia Kachika couldn't help but feel a little jealous. You know, in Rukia Kachika's memory, Senju Makoto's arms were where she had lived since she was a child. Although she didn't know and she started to dislike being held by Senju Makoto, now it seems that Kusaka Yaru replaced her in Senju Makoto's arms. This made Rukia Kachika inexplicably feel uncomfortable, as if her adopted father had a biological daughter and ignored her feelings. However, Rukia Kachika unconsciously felt a little jealous, but she was unwilling to admit that she had a father-like dependence on Senju Makoto in her heart, let alone compete with Kusaka Yaru for a position. For a while, Rukia Kachika's face became even colder, as if she was exactly the same as Byakuya Kachika. During the captain's meeting, Senju Makoto also took the opportunity to introduce the new vice-captains to the other Shinigami in the waiting room to facilitate the communication and assistance between different squads in the future. Soon, after the vice-captains in the adjutant waiting room had a preliminary understanding of each other, the closed door of the captain's meeting room slowly opened, announcing the end of this captain's meeting. The vice-captains in the adjutant waiting room also left one after another, welcoming their respective captains to leave the first team, and Senju Makoto also watched the captains and vice-captains leave one by one. Moreover, almost every captain who left would stop and talk to Senju Makoto for a few words before leaving. Brother Makoto, remember to find me to have fun when you have the chance. It's great. Kusaka Yaru, who was sitting on King Puchi's shoulder, was like a big conspicuous bag. He was carried away by King Puchi's and he didn't forget to shout to Senju Makoto. Senju Makoto. Seeing this, Aiden Sasuke, who walked in front of Senju Makoto, chuckled and said, Mr. Makoto's popularity in the Seireitei is unexpectedly high. The 5th Division will be reorganized. I will invite Mr. Makoto to a gathering later. Please do me the honor. Of course. Senju Makoto would naturally not refuse this honor to Aiden Sasuke, his most special ally. Not to mention, Aiden Sasuke specially returned to the Seireitei to serve as the captain of the 5th Division. In another sense, it also made it easier to cooperate and communicate with Aiden Sasuke. As for Seireitei, who had been standing far away as if nothing had happened after Aiden Sasuke took Mamo to say goodbye to Senju Makoto and left, she just walked past Senju Makoto as if by chance. However, as she got closer to Senju Makoto, Seireitei's soft spirit body, which practiced Byakuya and Shunpo, seemed to become more and more stiff. And then, under Senju Makoto's somewhat confused gaze, Seireitei didn't say anything to him specifically. Instead, she inexplicably changed to walking with her hands and feet together, and disappeared from her sight in the blink of an eye. Chapter 719. Izanagi is in a state of confusion. This, Senju Makoto looked at the direction where Seireitei left, and felt that it was a bit confusing. After he resurrected from the dead, Seireitei's reaction became very strange in Senju Makoto's eyes. Seireitei should have some special feelings for him and should be particularly concerned about him, but every time he met Seireitei seemed to act as if she was not familiar with him, and even her behavior was very stiff. At this moment, Senju Makoto suddenly felt that the left half of his body was pressed down by something soft. He turned his head and saw that it was Shifunuan Yorishi who was grinning as if eating melon. TSK Shifunuan Yorishi raised his eyebrows at Senju Makoto and asked, "Cute, isn't it? Little Seireitei." Senju Makoto's eyes unconsciously slid down to Shifunuan Yorishi's delicate face that looked like a cat demon, and as expected, she was majestic. Immediately, Senju Makoto coughed lightly and reminded her, "Captain Shifunuan, please be careful about your behavior." "Oh, okay. Shifunuan Yorishi lowered his eyebrows slightly, with a rather resentful expression, and said, "It seems that Makoto has forgotten that I worked hard to replace Kikushansui as the captain, and it was for whose sake. For this reason, I have to keep this appearance like 100 years ago. The feeling of wearing a death suit is very annoying and uncomfortable." Senju Makoto. At this moment, if it weren't for the fact that there were many captains, vice-captains and members of the first team around, Senju Makoto would want to ask, "Yorishi, even if you want to steal mutton, don't bring it to the door of the first team to eat it." Of course, Senju Makoto, who knows Shifunuan Yorishi very well, knows that this is just Shifunuan Yorishi's bad taste. Captain Shifen Yuan, this is the first team's dormitory, please pay attention to the impact. Senju Cheng had to remind him again. Upon hearing this, Shifen Yuan Yorishi approached the ear of Senju Cheng, who looked innocent and neat, without caring about his image, and spoke in a voice that only Senju Cheng could hear. So, just change the place. Then I will sneak back to the master's bed tonight. What surprised Shifen Yuan Yorishi was that at the same time, the voice of Makoto Senju rang in her ears. Is Nanao, tonight? Shifen Yuan Yorishi's face flashed with a strange color. After years of tacit understanding, Shifen Yuan Yorishi instantly understood what Makoto Senju meant. Then, Shifen Yuan Yorishi left with her adjutant Nanao, who followed behind her, with an expression as if her evil taste was satisfied. Moreover, during the whole process, Nanao still did not look up at Makoto Senju, but just followed Shifen Yuan Yorishi silently. And Nanao felt a little confused, and her mind was like a mess as she followed Shifen Yuan Yorishi back to the 8th Division. Then Nanao was about to say goodbye to Shifen Yuan Yorishi and return to her residence to think about the shocking fact calmly. However, Shifen Yorishi put her arm around Nanao's shoulders and took her to her own courtyard without saying anything. Vice Captain is, no, that's too polite. How about I call you Nanao like Captain Kriku? After a pause, Shifen Yorishi continued with a smile. Come to think of it, after I became the captain of the 8th Division, I haven't had a good exchange with Nanao and cultivated our relationship. My brother just happened to send me a lot of good wine. How about Nanao and I have a few drinks? However, the absent-minded Nanao naturally wanted to refuse subconsciously and said, Captain Shiuin, I don't feel well today. I'll talk to Captain Shiuin another day. However, before Nanao could finish, Shiuin Yorishi forcibly dragged Nanao back to the captain's courtyard of the 8th Division. Then, when Nanao reacted, she was pulled to a table and a large cup of fragrant sake was stuffed into her hand. Nanao refused again. Captain Shifen Yuan, I really don't feel like drinking now. Shifen Yuan Yorishi smiled and said, It's because I found that Nanao seemed to be in a bad mood, so I specially invited Nanao to drink. Nanao pushed her glasses and answered intellectually. Drinking will only reduce rationality and make it impossible to think clearly. Rationality doesn't matter at all. Shifen Yuan Yorishi took the lead and tasting the wine and said, Drinking will make all troubles disappear, and then, you will feel ecstatic. Suddenly, Nanao, who used to be quite resistant to the so-called wine, couldn't help but flash a little heartbeat in her heart. Shifen Yuan Yorishi keenly caught the hesitation of Nanao at this moment, and directly raised her hand to hold Nanao's hand, so that Nanao unconsciously swallowed the whole cup of sake. In an instant, the burning sensation flowed from the mouth to the abdomen, and then turned into a warm feeling that spread to the internal organs. A rich and intoxicating aroma escaped from Nanao's mouth and nose. Shifen Yuan Yorishi's eyes flashed with a trace of heartache. This is a good wine that the Shifen Yuan family has collected for hundreds of years. However, if this wine can seduce Nanao to like wine, not to mention that it can also complete the task of monitoring Nanao that Senju Cheng asked, and he can sneak out to drink in the future, I believe Nanao can understand a little bit, right? Nanao's ability is naturally the best among the vice captains, but that comes from the rigid style of doing things that she was used to when she was the adjutant of Kokushansui, which makes Shifen Yuan Yorishi, who is full of wildness and bad taste, feel quite uncomfortable. How is it, not bad? Shifen Yuan Yorishi asked with a smile, and filled Nanao's glass with wine again. After taking a big sip just now, Nanao, who usually doesn't drink at all, had a few more blurs in her eyes, and answered subconsciously. It tastes much better than I thought, and it smells so good, then drink more as Shifen Yuan Yorishi urged her to drink again and again. Nanao, who was already confused, unconsciously drank one glass after another, and her whole brain was completely empty, and her body was also light. When she suddenly opened her eyes, the familiar and innocent appearance of Senju Cheng appeared in Nanao's eyes. Makoto-kun! Nanao exclaimed. Senju Cheng stepped back awkwardly, holding a quilt in his retracted hand. Chapter 720. Divine Sword 8 Mirror Sword. Chapter 720. Divine Sword. 8 Mirror Swords. Nanao, I'm sorry, I seem to have woken you up. Senju Cheng put down the quilt in his hand and said a little embarrassedly. After seeing that the person in front of him was Senju Cheng, the trust based on instinct made Nanao's expression relax. He patted his head and said, Makoto-kun. Why are you here? What am I doing? When he said this, Izanao's mind flashed the scene of himself drinking with Shiwu and Yorishi, but Izanao had no impression of what happened afterwards. I originally came here to discuss some official business with Captain Shiwu. I was about to leave when I saw you seem to be drunk and sleeping here. After a pause, Senju Cheng seemed to have thought of something, and said as if he was afraid that Izanao would misunderstand. I have absolutely no other intentions. I'm just worried that Nano will catch a cold if she sleeps all night like this, so I found a quilt to cover her. Hearing the caring and somewhat flustered words, a touch flashed across Izanao's originally intellectual and capable face. For Izanao, she was entrusted to Kokushansui's care when she was very young. However, with Kokushansui's character of drinking all day and lingering in the joy of izakaya, how could he really take care of the details of Izanao's life? On the contrary, it was Izanao who began to take care of Kokushansui in all aspects since she was a child, and after Melissa was forced to flee Seireitei, Izanao hurriedly took over the position of vice captain. This also made Izanao's character more capable, helping to take care of Kokushansui's details in both public and private matters. During this long time, Kokushansui has undoubtedly gradually gotten used to it. Even Izanao has gotten used to taking care of others like this, and no one has ever cared whether Izanao is tired or not. Until, thank you. Izanao said to Senju Cheng somewhat unnaturally, and her heart was throbbing with the unfamiliar feeling of being taken care of. You're welcome. Senju Cheng smiled gently, and then handed the two corners of the quilt that had been spread out in his hand to Izanao, saying, although Nanao has woken up, it's better to cover her up to avoid catching a cold. After Izanao subconsciously took the quilt, she felt inexplicably lost in her heart, and even regretted that she woke up at the wrong time. Being covered with a quilt by Cheng himself, maybe, it would be better than imagined. Izanao thought so, and then habitually knelt up, and then skillfully folded that part of the quilt on her legs, and said a little embarrassedly, sorry, Cheng, I drank a few more glasses today, please forgive me for my inappropriate behavior. It's okay. After a pause, Senju Cheng simply knelt down in front of Izanao and said, it's just that Nano in my memory never drank a drop of alcohol. Could it be related to what happened today? Izanao heard this and suddenly remembered something. She reached out to touch her waist, nothing. Suddenly, Izanao's beautiful eyes widened, and panic flashed past. Just when she was about to get up and look for it. At this moment, Senju Cheng's voice rang out. Nano, are you looking for this? Then, a bladeless sword with a ruler-shaped blade and 4 prisms on each side was handed to Izanao. Seeing this, Izanao quickly took it with both hands and checked it carefully, and then heaved a sigh of relief. Senju Cheng seemed to be a little puzzled and asked, Nano, is this your zanpakutō? But I remember you didn't have one before. Izanao was a little speechless when she heard this, and her action of stroking the bladeless sword also paused. After a long moment, Izanao slowly spoke. This is not my zanpakutō. To be more precise, these are the only 2 zanpakutō that have been passed down from generation to generation in the Seireitei. The other one is called Genrokegano, and this one is called Sacred Sword Mirror Sword. Sacred Sword Mirror Sword? Senju Cheng's expression just showed a hint of surprise, and then he seemed to be unable to help but exclaimed. So amazing, I didn't expect the zanpakutō passed down in the Nano family to be so powerful. However, after hearing Senju Cheng's words, Izanao couldn't help but gradually increase the force of stroking the Sacred Sword Mirror Sword, until the knuckles of his fingers turned white, and he spoke. Mr. Cheng, do you know? The mission of the Iz family is to protect this Excalibur Mirror Sword, and the curse of the Iz family is also to protect this Excalibur Mirror Sword. Curse? Senju asked with some doubt. Yes, it is a curse. Izanao bit her lower lip and said. Unlike other nobles, the Iz family is an extremely special matrilineal family. Do you know why? Senju looked at Izanao, who was usually very intelligent and capable. At this moment, she was extremely emotional, as if the painful secret hidden in the deepest part of her heart had to be revealed bit by bit. Because only female members can use the Excalibur Mirror Sword? Senju asked guessingly. No. Izanao shook her head, lowered her head as if she was concentrating on stroking the Excalibur Mirror Sword, and answered. Because, the curse. The Iz family only produces female newborns, and every male who marries the Iz family will die young soon after marriage, so, the Iz family can only be a special matriarchal family. In the past, in order to allow me to escape the curse brought about by the sacred sword that protected the era, my mother sealed the sacred sword 8 mirror sword in Captain Kuku's Kaiten Kyokotsu when I was very young, forming a pair of special double swords zanpakutō. However, with Captain Kuku's lock knot and soul sleep being pierced, Captain Kuku's spiritual power is no longer enough to maintain the seal on the sacred sword 8 mirror sword, and he can only choose to return the sacred sword 8 mirror sword to my hands again, and personally fulfill the mission of the Is family. Time, at this moment, it seemed to have stopped in the room. Izanao also felt that her heart seemed to have stopped beating, and with the silence of the person in front of her who she dared not look directly at, cracks slowly appeared one after another until it completely shattered, and fell into the abyss. As expected, this is the result. Izanao pressed the divine sword, 8 mirror sword across her thighs with both hands, her face turned pale. That unspoken confession, that intention that would hurt the other party, is it over now? Next, I'm sure Makao will hate me and stay away from me, right? Chapter 721. The sword that kills gods. But why? Shouldn't I have known that if I told you this, you would definitely hate me? No one would risk their life for the affection of a cursed woman. No, I should say that I can't let you get close to me like this. If I can't control my affection for you, it will cause you great trouble and danger. But why do you feel so sad? Why do you feel like you were about to lose something important? Izanao lowered her head and her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Tears fell drop by drop, hitting the strange yet familiar divine sword, 8 mirror sword in her arms. However, Izanao, who didn't want to show any weakness in front of Senju Makao, or an expression that might make Senju Makao soft-hearted, gritted her teeth and tried hard not to sob. Even her delicate face was faintly crying. However, at this moment, Senju Makao, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly said with emotion, "Nanao, your mother is really great." Izanao was stunned. Because she suffered the pain of losing her lover, she did not succumb to it and took it for granted. Instead, she tried her best to let you have a completely different destiny. She is really a great mother. Senju Makao's tone revealed admiration and respect. In the aristocratic class in the Seireitei, which used to be corrupt, Izanao's mother can be said to be enlightened and great. This is comparable to the old times in Senju Makao's previous life, which was full of etiquette and customs, trying every means to prevent her daughter from having her feet bound like her mother. Feeling the admiration, Izanao unconsciously raised his head and stared at Senju Makao in a daze. "Makao, you actually think so?" Senju Makao raised his hand and gently wiped away the remaining tears on Izanao's face with his thumb, and said, "Nanao, why are you crying?" Nanao, who suddenly reacted, rarely showed a girlish look. She turned her head away in panic and wiped the tears from her face, covering it up with a slurred voice. No. Nanao, are you worried about the curse of the sword guarded by your family?" Senju Makao said, then thought for a while and spoke. "Nanao, when your family tried to break the curse, did you think of such a possibility?" "What possibility?" Nanao asked subconsciously. Senju Makao said seriously. "That is, not getting married." Nanao. In an instant, Nanao turned her head and looked at Makao Senju in shock, almost instinctively blurting out, "How can that be? Isn't that very irresponsible to men?" Senju Makao shook his head and spoke with some emotion. "How could that be? Compared to the curse that could take away one's life, the so-called ritual and identity are undoubtedly quite insignificant." After a pause, a trace of depression and melancholy flashed across Senju Makao's face. He turned his head and looked at the night sky outside the side window and said, "If that man really loves you, then compared to staying with Nanao for thousands of years, what is there to hesitate about those sacrifices of status?" At this moment, Izanao's face almost turned red with the naked eye. "Look, stay together." This word almost caused a soul-piercing attack to Izanao, who had an extremely pessimistic and self-blaming mentality towards love since childhood. This idea, Izanao didn't dare to imagine it even in her dreams in the past. "Really? Is it really possible?" Izanao asked with a stammer. "It should be okay." Senju Makao's tone also revealed a bit of too much certainty, and then he said, "I don't know much about your family's curse. I'm judging based on Nanao's description. If the condition for the curse to take effect specifies a man who is married to a woman from the Is family, then it is likely to be effective." However, Nanao suddenly thought of something, and her red face slowly faded a little, and asked, "But, what if Makao's judgment is wrong?" even if they are not married. As long as a man is deeply loved by a woman from the Is family, he will not be able to escape the bad luck. Then, it shouldn't be that bad, right? Senju Cheng shook his head, thinking that this possibility is extremely low. Otherwise, the curse of the Is family can be completely sublimated into a conceptual weapon. Unlike staring at someone who will get pregnant, the Is family will definitely make whoever they love die suddenly, right? Of course, what Senju Cheng didn't tell Izanagi was that before she woke up, Senju Cheng had an in-depth understanding and examination of her and the divine sword, 8 Mirror Sword. Therefore, in Senju Cheng's judgment, it is better to say that it is not an invisible curse, but the influence caused by the divine sword 8 Mirror Sword that has been emitting some special fluctuations invisibly. It is the kind of fluctuation that has caused the Is family's newborns to be female, and also caused the non-Is family members to be constantly weakened and even collapsed if they were exposed to the divine sword 8 Mirror Sword too much. However, even if it is Senju Cheng's judgment, the fear that has been instilled in Izanagi's mind since childhood cannot be eliminated all at once. More importantly, Izanagi dare not gamble. Senju Cheng felt that the foreshadowing was almost done, and seemed to inadvertently suggest it. Now, then, maybe you can choose to give up the divine sword 8 Mirror Sword. After this, Izanagi fell into silence for a long time, and even the alcohol that was still constantly working in his brain seemed to be decomposed a lot in an instant. Then, Izanagi thoroughly recalled the abnormal reaction of the divine sword 8 Mirror Swords to Senju Cheng not long ago, looked up at Senju Cheng, and slowly spoke. Cheng-kun, do you know the ability and history of the divine sword 8 Mirror Swords? I don't know. Senju Cheng blinked and replied. Divine sword 8 Mirror Swords is also known as the sword that kills gods. Izanagi took a deep breath and slowly said the name. It has no effect on ordinary Shinigami, hollows, and humans. Its creation and significance are only to deal with gods. Once upon a time, the Soul King who created Soul Society, Huko Mundo, and the human world in ancient times was also killed by the 8 Mirror Sword. And it suddenly reacted to Cheng today, which can only mean one fact. Chapter 722. God's qualities. When Izanagi said this, Senju Cheng's eyes condensed secretly. Is family a very special noble class among the many noble classes that have been passed down from generation to generation in the ancient times of Seireitei? Perhaps, in terms of pure status and power, the Is family is not as good as the 4 nobles. However, after specially investigating the various histories of the Is family today, I noticed that the Is family also has a high status among the noble class, and many sacrificial affairs among the noble class have been presided over by the Is family from generation to generation. However, Senju Cheng's face revealed surprise and asked, "What does it mean?" And Izanagi's expression has become completely serious. One hand subconsciously rested on the handle of the divine sword 8 Mirror Sword, and then asked, Mr. Cheng, have you come into contact with any strange things? Or have you noticed any special changes in the spirit? How could that be? As a doctor, if there is any abnormal change in the spirit, I will definitely be aware of it at the first time. Senju Cheng replied. If that's the case, why did the divine sword, 8 Mirror Sword react so strongly to Cheng? This can only mean that Cheng has acquired some of the qualities of a god. Izanagi said in a solemn and puzzled tone. Part of the qualities of a god? Senju Cheng asked. Izanagi replied. That's right. The divine sword, 8 Mirror Sword will not have any effect on ordinary Shinigami. It will only react to gods, so it is very likely that Cheng's spirit is inhabited by a part of the Soul King's body. Instantly, Senju Cheng fell into a moment of silence. Senju Cheng's body naturally did not have a situation similar to Yukita Jushiro, where one of the Soul King's arms was inhabited. However, the body of Soul King Kika was nominally handed over to Kurosaki Mairi for division and sealing, but in fact it was secretly transferred to Senju Cheng's hands and stored in the secret garden for various studies. So, you have some of the Soul King's scent on your body? This guess flashed through Senju Cheng's mind, and then it was denied in an instant. The intuition of danger that he had about the divine sword, 8 Mirror Swords at that moment was definitely not wrong. The 8 Mirror Swords could definitely hurt his ultimate spirit body easily. So, it seems that there is only one real answer. I have some characteristics similar to the Soul King. Senju Cheng made a quick judgment in his heart, and on the surface he showed an expression of sudden enlightenment, and then he tore off the Death Hegemony suit to expose his chest. In Senju Cheng's chest, the faint golden light of the King's seal was faintly visible. According to common sense, after Senju Cheng was resurrected with the power of the King's Seal, the GOTY 13 should have resealed the King's Seal. However, the threat of Aizen Sosok has not disappeared, and Senju Cheng nominally needs to rely on the power of the King's Seal to compete with Aizen Sosok. Therefore, none of the captains mentioned the sealing of the King's Seal again, but tacitly agreed that it would be kept temporarily by Senju Cheng, the real strongest person in the Seireitei at the moment. Nanao, you mean, the King's Seal? Nanao was startled, and a little confused, and then seemed to think that Senju Cheng's answer was quite reasonable. Perhaps the King's Seal could also trigger an abnormal reaction from the Divine Sword, 8 Mirror Swords. Then, Nanao's expression obviously relaxed and said, "Great, if Cheng is inhabited by a part of the Soul King's body, it would be quite troublesome." Similar to Captain Yukituk? Senju Cheng asked. As Yukituk Joshiro showed the strange power of stillness, the corresponding secret naturally spread among the top leaders of the GOTY 13. The right arm of the Soul King. In the GOTY 13, which nominally respects the Soul King Palace and the Soul King, being inhabited by the right arm of the Soul King is definitely an extremely glorious thing. Nanao seemed to have sensed some dangerous thoughts of Senju Cheng, and blurted out subconsciously. "No, Cheng-kun, you must not think of it as an honor." "Why?" Senju Cheng asked. Because, Nanao looked at the kind and gentle face of Senju Cheng in front of him, gritted his teeth, and said, "Once a considerable part of the Soul King's body is inhabited, in addition to causing an extremely heavy and irreversible burden on oneself, it will also have the possibility of being made into a Soul King's substitute and then turned into a wedge to stabilize the world. So, if there is a part of the Soul King's body in Cheng's body, then even if Cheng objects, it doesn't matter. I will definitely cut off the part of the body that belongs to the spirit in Cheng's body." Senju Cheng's expression became a little more strange. With Unohana Retsu serving as the Captain General, some secrets that only the Captain General can know the full picture will naturally unfold in front of Senju Cheng. The origin and contradiction between the 0 Division and the GOTY 13 divisions. The numerous secrets related to the Soul King Palace. And the reason why the GOTY 13 divisions need to risk everything to protect the Soul King Palace. The Soul King who created Soul Society, Huko Mundo, and the real world is actually the wedge that keeps Soul Society, Huko Mundo, and the real world stable. In ancient times, Ichibei of the High Oshugu and the 4 great nobles attacked and killed the Soul King, and after he was cut into a veritable human stick, the Soul King, who had been turned into a human stick, was still needed to serve as a wedge to stabilize the world. Therefore, the purpose of the GOTY 13 divisions to protect the Soul King Palace is essentially to protect the wedge from being destroyed, which would then lead to the destruction of the world. Makoto Senju is already very clear about this, but what Makoto Senju did not expect is that the Is family is also so clear about this secret. "Nanao," Makoto Senju asked in a faint tone. "If one day you have to choose between me becoming the wedge and the destruction of the world, which one would you choose?" Nanao tightly grasped the hilt of the 8 Mirror Sword and answered slowly. "There must be another way." Immediately, Senju Makoto couldn't help but reveal a bright smile on his face, and then asked, "Although it is a bit presumptuous, but, Nanao, are you interested in serving as the 3rd seat in the first team? That is, becoming my deputy?" After a pause, Senju Makoto scratched his head and said with some annoyance, "Well, this proposal seems a bit excessive. After all, Nanao is now the vice captain, which is equivalent to." The next moment, 2 different voices sounded at the same time. "I do." "No." Chapter 723 Ching's Floor. Then, Shifen Yuan Yorishi appeared in the room in a flash and said, "Absolutely not, Makoto-kun. Now the 8th Division can only operate normally with the assistance of Nanao. Without Nanao, my familiarity with the 8th Division is definitely not enough." And Nanao's face was completely ruddy. After all, she wanted to leave the 8th Division, but was caught on the spot by the current captain of the 8th Division, which made Nanao, who was actually a little thin-skinned, feel embarrassed. However, Senju Makoto, who knew Shifen Yuan Yorishi's ability very well, naturally knew that Shifen Yuan Yorishi was just lazy and wanted to be a hands-off boss. A perfect vice-captain like Nanao is undoubtedly a blessing for the captain. With the strength of Captain Shifen Yuan, how could the 8th Division not be able to control it? Senju Makoto said. "No, absolutely not." However, Shifen Yuan Yorishi's attitude on this matter was unusually firm. Without his Nanao who could handle the team affairs perfectly, how could he have enough time to play? Then, Shifu Yuan Yorishi even showed signs of turning against Tiangun, and pushed Senju Makatao out directly, not giving him a chance to speak. Bang! As the gate of the courtyard behind him was heavily closed by Shifu Yuan Yorishi, Senju Makatao couldn't help but reveal a little helplessness on his face, and sighed. Yorishi, this lazy cat, is really enough. Then, a gentle voice sounded at the side of Senju Makatao. But it doesn't matter, Makatao-kun, with the ability of Captain Shifu Yuan, you don't have to worry about accidents if you put his nano under the eyes of Captain Shifu Yuan. The next moment, the empty air in the eyes of the other Shinigami was reflected in the eyes of Senju Makatao, and the figure of Aizen Sasuke appeared. Facing the invisible threat of the divine sword 8 mirror swords, Senju Makatao naturally would not take the risk to come alone. In addition to Yorishi Shirin and the ubiquitous Seireitei Sawada, Aizen Sasuke is also one of the backup plans prepared by Makatao Senju. Once something unexpected happens, this lineup, let alone his Nanao, who is only a vice captain, even all the members of the 0th Division will be enough to face off in a short period of time. And Makatao Senju's not annoyed at all when Aizen Sasuke saw through his main purpose of recruiting his Nanao to the 1st Division as the 3rd seat. Of course, it is also a fact that his Nanao has outstanding workability. If there is the assistance of his Nanao, then the huge workload undertaken as the Captain General's adjutant will be instantly relieved by more than half. However, this time, confirming the secrets of the Is family, the ability of the 8 mirror swords, and his Nanao's attitude, has also allowed Makatao Senju to successfully achieve the goal of this trip. Then, looking at the beautiful moonlight, Makatao Senju simply walked back with Aizen Sasuke towards the direction of the 1st Division's barracks, and sighed. It's a pity that the 8 mirror sword can only be used by the bloodline of the Is family, otherwise it can become an important trump card. Aizen Sasuke thought for a while and said, "It's not that there is no way. Could it be that the power of the Hinyu can also control the 8 mirror sword?" Senju Makatao asked. "That's not the case." Aizen Sasuke shook his head and said, "Makatao-kun used his Nanao to give birth to his own Is family bloodliner, so wouldn't it be enough for his descendants to master the 8 mirror sword?" Senju Makatao. This suggestion is outrageous. Even Senju Makatao couldn't help but wonder if Aizen Sasuke was deliberately trying to secretly undermine the relationship between him and Unohana teacher. However, adhering to the attitude of discussing the matter at hand, Senju Makatao refuted. "Forget it. Nanao's reliance and trust in me are unexpectedly high, and the probability of her using the 8 mirror sword on me is extremely low. On the contrary, if a filial daughter is born, and someone bewitches him and wants to choke me alive with the 8 mirror sword, that would be quite a troublesome thing." When he said this, Senju Makatao also glanced at Aizen Sasuke obscurely. There is no doubt that if Aizen Sasuke really wanted to PUA a female Shinigami, with the terrible brain and the ability of mirror flowers and water moons, I'm afraid that there are very few people in the entire Soul Society who can withstand it. Hinamura Mamo is a typical example. The child has been almost stupid by PUA. In other words, Aizen Sasuke did not intend to take Hinamura Mamo away, otherwise Hinamura Mamo would have followed him to rebel against the Seireitei. However, what Senju Makatao did not know is that when he and Aizen Sasuke reached the fork in the road, they returned to their respective squads. When Aizen Sasuke returned to the courtyard of the 5th Division, Hinamura Mamo no longer had the serious look she had when she'd first met Amagai Shosuke. Instead, she was waiting for Aizen Sasuke's return with some nervousness and anticipation. Then, Hinamura Mamo hurriedly went to Aizen Sasuke and asked, "Captain Amagai, how is it going? The matter of inviting Senju-sama." "Oh, Aizen Sasuke said, perfectly disguising the appearance and demeanor of Amagai Shosuke with a mirror flower and water moon. "I tried very hard to speak well of you in front of Makatao tonight," Hinamura Mamo said with a bit of sadness on her face. "Ah, thank you Captain Amagai for your trouble." At this moment, Aizen Sasuke changed his tone and said, "But, no problem. I successfully invited Makatao-kun under the pretext of holding a banquet. I just need Vice Captain Hinamura to invite a few more friends to hold a party together." Instantly, Mama Hinamura's face was overjoyed, and her heart was filled with excitement to be able to get close to her rival again, and her favorability towards Amagai Shosuke also rose sharply. "Thank you, Captain Amagai." Mama Hinamura hurriedly thanked Aizen Sasuke, and then even her walking posture revealed a kind of joyful expectation when she left the courtyard. In response, Aizen Sasuke, who witnessed the back of Mama Hinamura, slowly outlined a smile on his face. It is too easy to gain the favor and trust of others naturally. Just by simply using the name of Makoto Senju, it is enough to easily make the simple-minded Mamo Hinamirai accept herself as a captain who is willing to consider her subordinates. Of course, more importantly, the only thing that Daisen Sosok was a little dissatisfied with Makoto Senju was that Makoto Senju seemed to have given Unohana Retsu all his trust. This is definitely not a trait that a king should have. Moreover, Unohana Retsu gradually failed to keep up with Makoto-kun in his own evolution. At the time, Unohana Retsu will become Makoto-kun's flaw and weakness. Therefore, Makoto-kun, there are so many female Shinigami in the Seireitei, why do you have to focus all your attention on Unohana Retsu? As your best friend, let me give you a little push and eliminate that only flaw before the decisive battle with the Zero Squad begins. Chapter 724. Holding the jingling court in your hand. At the same time, Makoto Senju returned to the First Division and went straight to the top floor, which was similar to the ancient building Castle Tower. This is also the most special place in the architecture of the First Division and the other divisions. The location of the Castle Tower has represented the symbol of ruling power since the distant past. This is also the area where the captain of the 13th Division of the GOTY is usually located. Dong dong, with the sound of soft footsteps, Makoto Senju climbed to the top floor and looked around, then looked at Unohana Retsu, who was standing on the balcony with his back to him. The First Division's Aoi was rolled up from time to time in the night wind. Unlike the habit of tying a braid on his chest, after Makoto Senju wiped off the scar on Unohana Retsu's chest that was left 1,000 years ago and officially took the position of captain, Unohana Retsu let his long black hair like a waterfall fall behind him. Only a strand of green grass that was full of vitality was simply tied at the end of the black hair like a hairband. As if sensing Senju Makoto's movements, Unohana Retsu's gentle and elegant voice sounded. "Are you back?" In other words, except for Unohana Retsu and Senju Makoto, no other death god is qualified to climb here. Because Senju Makoto did not kneel behind the captain-in-chief respectfully like the former captain-in-chief's adjutant, Suzuki, and respectfully responded to the captain-in-chief's questions. On the contrary, Senju Makoto walked behind Unohana Retsu with a smile on his face, and with his open arms, he directly hugged the captain-in-chief Unohana Retsu from behind. Unohana Retsu did not resist or feel uncomfortable at all, feeling the warmth and majestic embrace from behind, and leaned back slightly in response. Senju Makoto sniffed the fragrance of Unohana Retsu from a close distance, which was quite similar to the fragrance of the flower, and answered. "Now that you're back, Naneo probably won't stand against us." For a moment, Unohana Retsu, who was originally standing on the top floor of the castle tower, which represented the supreme status of the GOTY 13, was no longer the majestic figure just now, but completely collapsed in Senju Makoto's arms, and spoke in an increasingly gentle tone. "It's enough for you to make your own judgment, Makoto. You are the captain-in-chief, this is a routine report to you." Senju Makoto replied with a smile. Unohana Retsu heard this, her beautiful eyes turned, but she couldn't help but give Senju Makoto a blank look. It's true that she is the captain-in-chief, but now the one who truly controls the entire GOTY 13 is undoubtedly Senju Makoto. Perhaps, it's not appropriate to call Unohana Retsu a puppet, but Unohana Retsu knows more clearly that in fact, she can only be regarded as Senju Makoto's spokesperson. Whether it was Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, who had retired to the Shinigami Academy of Spiritual Arts, or himself, the newly appointed captain-in-chief, they were all just one of the ways that Makoto Senju used to confuse the Zero Division. The purpose was to make the high-ranking Zero Division make a wrong judgment. Nothing unexpected happened between the GOTY 13 and the Seireitei, including the power changes, which were still under their control. Makoto Senju hugged the teacher Unohana, whom he had fallen in love with 100 years ago, and looked down at the Seireitei in front of him, and inexplicably felt a little emotional. Unohana Retsu, who was in close contact with Makoto Senju, was sensitive to the changes in Makoto Senju's emotions and asked, "What's wrong, Makoto?" "No, I just can't help but feel that 100 years have passed so quickly." Makoto Senju's voice was a little more distant and nostalgic, and he spoke. "More than 100 years ago, when I first entered the Seireitei, I was led by Madara as yoke to the 4th Division. I was so unfamiliar and confused about everything, and I could only kneel in front of Unohana-sensei." When he said this, Senju Makoto pointed in the direction of the 4th Division's barracks, and a lot of memories emerged in his mind. Unohana Retsu couldn't help but feel a little nostalgic when he heard this, and recalled the scene when he really met Senju Makoto for the first time. At the time, Unohana Retsu only saw Senju Makoto's love and talent for Kido, and planned to let him succeed the position of captain of the 4th Division in the future. But he didn't expect that after the two sides formed a bond called master and apprentice, it was as if the gears of fate began to turn towards another trajectory in the original plan. 100 years, for Unohana, it was not an extremely long time, but when he looked back, he suddenly felt that he had changed drastically. However, compared with his inner feelings, Unohana subconsciously wanted to speak to comfort Senju Makoto's emotions. I didn't expect that after 100 years, the situation has reversed to such a point. Senju Makoto spoke first, looking down as if he wanted to take in everything below, and there was an indescribable dominance in his gentle voice. Today, I am looking down at the Seireitei that I once hesitated and feared, and I have firmly grasped it in my palm. When he said this, Senju Makoto loosened his arm around Unohana waist, slowly opened it in front of him, and then suddenly closed it. If this sentence flowed into the ears of other Shinigami, they would certainly be shocked by these extremely arrogant words. However, only Unohana knew, the Makoto behind him, who made her fall in love, really controlled the entire Seireitei in every sense. What Yamamoto Shinraisai Shibukuni, who had been fighting for power with the Central 46th Chamber and the Zero Division for thousands of years, could not do, Senju Makoto has now truly done it. The Central 46 Chambers were slaughtered, and the corrupt aristocracy was almost wiped out, even though the nominal Seireitei still retained the Shifen Yuan family, the Kachike family, and a large number of other nobles from the four great nobles. However, these remaining nobles were all selected and retained by Makoto Senju, and were also used as a sleight of hand to confuse and mislead the Zero Squad. In fact, the entire Seireitei has only one voice, and that is the voice of the 13th Squad. But the entire 13th Squad, from top to bottom, is almost completely controlled by Unohana and Makoto Senju. And all the Shinigami or nobles who would have the desire to compete for power with Unohana are sacrificed in the war with Aizen Sosuk. Either die or be abolished. Of course, in the eyes of the Zero Squad, there are still multiple voices in the entire Seireitei. For example, the chief and deputy chief of the Kitmsk, Tesmuri and Hakijin the Rishoda, who were specially invited back to assume their posts, are not under the direct jurisdiction of the Gotti 13. There are also the independently operated Senbon, the Great Spirit Book Corridor controlled by the nobles, and other organizations, which are all independent voices of the Seireitei outside the Gotti 13. Then, the Seireitei nominally maintains the external threat of Aizen Sosuk, while the internal situation is one superpower and many strong ones. Chapter 725 New Fight. A gust of night wind blew past. On this balcony protected by the ghost barrier, where the outside world could not see the specific situation on the top floor, Unohana leaned on Senju Makoto behind him and said, "Yes, Seireitei has been completely controlled by you, Makoto. Not me, but us," Senju Makoto said with a gentle smile on his face. "Moreover, Seireitei is not just this area. All the ties we left in this area have been preserved by us. We don't have to worry about having to sever the ties due to position issues, or even drawing a sword against our friends." Listening to Senju Makoto's story, Unohana beautiful eyes looked up, looking at Senju Makoto's almost perfect outline from bottom to top, and did not interrupt Senju Makoto. However, only Unohana knew, in fact, his only bond was Senju Makoto. Everything else could be cut off. Then, Unohana followed Senju Makoto's line of sight and looked down at the Seireitei in front of him, thinking silently. "However, since Makoto cherishes all of this, then, I will also protect you a little." Makoto, suddenly, Unohana seemed to have thought of something and spoke. "Have you made a corresponding decision in your heart about the Zero Division and the Soul King Palace? Even if the various illusions of the Seireitei have successfully deceived the Zero Division and made them think that the Gotti 13 was just passing on the inheritance in accordance with time. However, the fact that there is only one sign of the true voice of the Seireitei cannot be concealed forever. Maybe it will be 100 years, maybe 50 years, or even 10 years, I understand." Senju Makoto answered in a very calm tone. "There is only one true voice in the Seireitei, which is not what the Zero Squad expected. Just as they once overthrew and killed the Soul King, they will also be on guard against the existence that truly shakes their position. However, it doesn't take 100 years to conceal the Zero Squad, and it doesn't even take 10 years. Unohana made a nasal sound that was somewhat cute and puzzled, and reached out to hold Senju Makoto's worn palm on his waist, which seemed to be trying to do something naughty, and said, "Unohana teacher experienced the war 1,000 years ago, so have you heard of a prophecy?" Senju Makoto asked. "What prophecy?" Unohana asked. Senju Cheng recalled the records he saw in the Ishida family and read softly. The sealed king of the Queen Sea will regain his heartbeat after 900 years, regain his consciousness after another 90 years, regain his power after another 9 years, and regain the world in just 9 days. Unohana heard this, and his eyes slightly condensed. Ithwaj. Unohana had seen the man who called himself King of Queen Sea thousands of years ago, and he knew that the guy possessed a power that was not weaker than that of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni at his peak. However, Unohana knew very well that there must be a reason for Senju to make such a prophecy. Then, Unohana calculated the date in the prophecy based on the time of Ithwaj's defeat. There are still about 2 years. Unohana said in a deep voice. Yes, if the prophecy is correct, then there are still about 2 years before Ithwaj completely regains his power. Senju confirmed Unohana calculation. Ithwaj, that man has experienced a failure, but he still wants to attack the Soul King Palace and seize the world as he did 1,000 years ago. Unohana said. Based on the information I have now, it is indeed the case, and I have roughly deduced where Ithwaj is hiding, but without further confirmed coordinates, we will never be able to find that location. Senju said. At this moment, Unohana expression unconsciously became completely serious, and he said. If that's the case, then we must prepare in advance. Whether it's the Ithwaj of 1,000 years ago or the Stern-Crossed Knights, they are both very difficult to deal with, not to mention that Ithwaj has been lurking for another 1,000 years, and will definitely accumulate a very terrifying combat power. By then, although Ithwaj's ultimate goal is to ascend to the Soul King Palace, his first goal will definitely be to defeat the 13th Court Guard Division, wash away the shame of the defeat 1,000 years ago, and prevent the 13th Court Guard Division from obstructing his plans and ambitions in the future. It must be said that Unohana vision and wisdom are absolutely worthy at the title of Captain General. Even Senju could not find any fault with Unohana analysis, and he also made a similar judgment on Ithwaj's behavior. However, there is one thing, Unohana teacher made a mistake. Senju reminded. What? Unohana looked at Senju with some doubts. That is, it's not just Ithwaj who wants to ascend to the Soul King Palace. We are also on the side that opposes Squad Zero. After a pause, Senju continued. So, it's not that the Stern-Crossed Knights, led by Ithwaj, challenge the Soul King Palace protected by Squad Zero and the Gotti 13. Rather, it's a three-way confrontation between Squad Zero, the Gotti 13, and the Stern-Crossed Knights. However, when Unohana was completely focused on what Senju was saying, he relaxed a little for a moment about Senju's white beating. The next moment, Unohana unconsciously uttered a hum sound, making a very seductive and charming sound. Unohana completely collapsed into Senju's arms, shouting in a voice that had no threat at all. Makao, stop messing around, let's talk about business. This is business too. What just happened is just business 2 years later. This is the top floor of the castle tower of the 1st Division of the Gotti 13, which represents authority. It's not appropriate. Unohana reminded. No, I just want to fight with Captain General Unohana. Senju breathing became heavier, and he said with a blurry look in his eyes. Unohana-sensei, I've been waiting for this moment for 100 years. In an instant, Unohana resistance also weakened unconsciously. It was not because of the 100 years of waiting, but because he understood the meaning hidden in Senju words. 100 years ago, he was just a weak soldier of the 4th Division, so how could he be qualified to get closer to Unohana as the captain? But now, Senju has truly mastered the Seireitei in his hands, and has the status and power that matches the object he desires. Yes, it has finally come to this moment, right at this position where he overlooks the Seireitei, it's okay to satisfy Makao. The next moment, the captain's Aori worn by Unohana was spread on the ground, an unprecedented and bloody fight began. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.